camera. Pastor Sam here. Oh, there, okay. I was looking up front, but you're fine right now. Thank you. All right. Welcome to the Bradenton City Council meeting at 8:30 a.m. Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022. As always, we will start with an invocation and a pledge. And the invocation will be led by Pastor Sam Rayner with West Bradenton Baptist Church. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you for the honor of praying. Heavenly Father, we are a blessed people, and we thank you for this community. Lord, I ask for discernment for our city council, for the knowledge to know what is right, for wisdom, the ability to act on that knowledge and do what is best. And Lord, for joy and internal stability, despite what external circumstances may dictate. And Lord, may we always remember that you are good, and we rest in your goodness. And it's in your Son's name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, at this time, we'll call the meeting to order. Proclamations. Mrs. Melton.
Yes. Child Abuse Prevention Month, April 2022. Whereas Florida's future prosperity depends on nurturing the healthy development of over 4 million children currently living, growing, and learning within our many diverse communities. And whereas child abuse is a crime against humanity that affects over 673,000 children in the United States each year, with 6,542 child abuse reports made to the Florida Abuse Hotline from Manatee County within the last year. And whereas child abuse and neglect can cause severe, costly, and lifelong problems among society and victims, such as social, criminal, and academic difficulties, including emotional, physical, and mental health problems. And whereas research shows parents and caregivers that have social networks that can seek support in times of need are more resilient, less isolated, and better able to provide safe environments and nurturing experiences for their children. And whereas individuals, businesses, schools, community, and faith-based organizations must make children a top priority and support the physical, social, emotional, academic, and mental development and well-being of all children. And whereas during the month of April, Prevent Child Abuse in Manatee County, in collaboration with the Florida Department of Children and Families, Manatee County Sheriff's Office, Bradenton Police Department, Manatee Children's Services, Healthy Start, Safe Children's Coalition, Pinwheels for Prevention, and all agencies dedicated to the well-being of children and families will be engaging in a coordinated effort to prevent child abuse and neglect by promoting awareness of healthy child development, positive parenting practices, and promoting healthy family relationships within our communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Jean Brown, as mayor of the city of Bradenton, Florida, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as Child Abuse Prevention Month, and urge all citizens to engage in activities whose purpose is to strengthen families and communities. Signed, Jean Brown, Mayor.
Thank you. Who do we have coming forward for that? Come on, bring your whole group up. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you very much for recognizing this, and I appreciate all of your help as on behalf of Manatee Children's Services and the children of the city of Bradenton and Manatee County. Thank you.
All right, we appreciate what you guys do, and I know obviously if you probably touches every life at some point, every family in that. So we've all been through situations, and we appreciate you being there to try to help to get, especially young people out of a tough situation. So thank you very much.
Have a good day.
You too. All right, Mrs. Melton, any presentations?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, we'll go to citizen comment. And just to clarify, obviously, it's important as we go through the citizen comment through our procedures that we do for public meetings and that and protocol is that we ask the citizens to have their 3 minutes, talk about, what they want in the 3 minutes. We'll move to the next citizen, and that at the end, we will, if the council has comments, that will be definitely opportunity to speak. Then also, sometimes during that citizen comment, there's something that a staff member in the room could help at that moment. We may ask that staff member to walk out with you and kind of, to help you through a situation. So at this time, the first citizen comment is from Bemis Smith. You come forward, state your name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Bemis Smith, 301 17th Street East, Bradenton, Florida, 34208. I want to thank Mary Ann Barnaby. She helped me get some things resolved this morning ahead of time that were confusing to me. It's been a little frustrating, same thing we run into with all the changes to the websites. It was easy to get both the agenda and the background ordinances. Nowadays, it's harder to do. But what I wanted to speak on briefly today was Resolution 22-9, the modifications to recycle and yard waste collection procedures, in particular, the yard waste portion of it. Essentially, what I see from talking to everyone about it is it's just a tax increase on a service that's been provided to the citizens of the city of Bradenton for as long as I can remember. And it's not even necessary as a tax increase. I mean, our city budget is 50% higher than it was 5 years ago. And even the folks on this council will acknowledge that the problems with that are not because we don't have enough money to spend on it, because no matter how much money we spend on it, we can't get enough people to do the work. So taxing people more for that service seems to be a little bit off base. That being said, my main concern is I didn't have the ordinance before me this morning because I wasn't able to get it, but in my last reading of it, I understood that it's not only the piles and all, but if a piece of wood is larger than 3 inches in diameter, it can trigger a $16 and change fee that goes along with that. Now, as an example, on the morning that y'all voted on that, my neighbor had a 6-inch branch fall out of her oak tree and block half of 3rd Avenue. We went over and towed it out of the way with a 4-wheeler and moved it where the city picks it up, and the city took it away without any problems. Had that happened after this ordinance went into effect, she would have had 2 choices. She could have either left it in the street, called the city, told them to come get it, it was blocking the street, they'd come do it for free, or she could haul it off, she could find somebody that had a chainsaw, she could cut it up, and she could pay $16 and change to get it taken away. Now, to me, that's just a tax on foliage. We want trees, so why are we punishing people when we acknowledge that it's not a financial situation? So my suggestion to you guys is, and the one that bothers me the most is, I got a lot of trees, I got a lot of stuff, but the tree part is maybe only once every 2 years do I need to put a big pile out by the street, but I do it myself. I have a chainsaw and all. If we could set up a situation where I'm getting ready to cut my trees this weekend, I can call up Jim McClellan and have him bring a dumpster over, set it in my yard. I'll put all my yard waste in there for that tree cutting that I'm doing myself. The city will come pick it up and do it for free. Then
Thank you, Mr.
that would
Smith.
be great. It's $350 now if I.
Thank you for your
underburn.
comments.
Thank
So,
you.
next would be Alice Payne. Good morning. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Alice May Payne, Deacon Payne's daughter. I'm at 423 12th Avenue East, the house where I'm homeless. They tore the house down. The city didn't build it, and I had a lot of interference, and that's why I'm there like that. I used to have to do live-in work and take care of people. But I can't do that anymore because I done got older, but I need somewhere to lay down. So I've been to the doctor, the hospital twice, where the bug's been biting me in the car, and I can't lay straight down in the front seat and all like this. I need my home fixed through the city. Miss Vicky told me, you're not gonna get your house done, not on my watch. And the original house was supposed to be done in 1997, and they didn't do it. Azell didn't do it, so I went to the senator. He got in trouble, but they went back and told him that some story. But my thing is, you do what the people ask you to do. And my brother interfered. He stole my money and everything at the bank, my job, Blake Hospital, my profit share, $3,000 for us to stay with him for 7 months. The contract says 3, no more than 2, no more than 3 months to build a house from the ground from the city. 7 months they had me and my daddy sitting out there going from place to place. You know, right is right and wrong is wrong. I don't mistreat people. I don't get in your business. But they do it because say we can do anything to you because you won't do anything. I said no, but I know who will. And the other thing I like is to keep America beautiful. In the summer, I used to have my nieces and nephews. When we walk down the street, I have them to pick up all the trash. And I said, let's help keep Manatee County beautiful. I always did want to work on that because I like things like that. Our community should be beautiful. I do that at Ash Racetrack. I come in there, everything on the floor, I just start cleaning up. So when I start cleaning up, now they clean up, now they clean the yard. I said, you're in my community. I have pride in my community. If we all did that, then we can all live loving one another. Because I want to be in a community where we love each other, we treat each other with the respect that we want so we can live. We breathe the same air, and we should be where we can treat each other like a human being. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Payne. Next, we have Rodney Jones. Please come forward, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes, an address.
Greetings, Rodney Jones, 213 16th Avenue. Here for the same reason. It's a shame I have to take off from work every other Wednesday to come down here to get a point across, and the mayor won't meet with me, even though he requests certain things. I oblige him. He says he's going to look into the situation, and he doesn't. But we've got a bigger problem, and Melanie's exasperating the problem, man. And the problem that you have is the truth. You know, the truth is the truth. You're not going to be able to bend it. You're not going to be able to lie about it. It is the truth. I had a situation at my home a couple of years ago. I've been here steadily. Nobody seems to care, but it represents misconduct in your Bradenton Police Department. What I allege, and have been coming since every meeting this year, and stating that I met with Josh Kramer in December on a Wednesday, and he stated to me, in reference to an incident at my home, that his officers did not tell him the truth when he asked where they were. That's a problem for me. So since that time, I've been chasing that down. Since that time, that has never been investigated. Melanie cannot produce the findings from these investigations. She can't. I've asked and asked, she can't produce them because they didn't do them, they hid them. So what we have now is, I've been here every single Wednesday, and she's made another inquiry saying that I've made a complaint since that time when I'm complaining about the same thing, and then again came with it unfounded. But the things that I've been complaining about, when you read through the documentation that she used, she didn't use anything that I've been complaining about here. I've been complaining about the same thing. She never asked Josh Kramer once in her inquiry, did you tell Mr. Jones that those guys didn't tell you the truth? Not once in there. She said that she reached out to Mr. Alfonso Houston. She never mentioned that Mr. Alfonso Houston came here and confirmed what I said, that Mr. Kramer lied. So she does this fake investigation, says that it's my complaint that I never made a complaint about. This is the second time she's done it. The first time she created a complaint that was mine that I never made about another traffic stop that I never saw. I know the gentleman who was stopped. He said he didn't make a complaint. I didn't make a complaint. Melanie said in court at my trial that she initiated the investigation. So how does she get initiate investigations and then assign my name to them and say that that's my complaint? When I keep telling you guys, I can show you in black and white the discrepancies between the two, and that's not my complaint. She's assigning complaints to me to cover for herself in the misconduct in that department. And Mr. Mayor, I've been asking you, man. I've done everything that you've asked me to do. You told me to get new evidence, I got new evidence. You said that you consider it and you get back with me and you haven't. So, I don't know, so if we got complaints, where are we supposed to take the complaints? Are we supposed to start handling this stuff on the street? I mean, if we keep coming down here complaining and nobody does anything, so where are we
Thank you,
supposed to go?
Mr. Jones. Thank you. All right, I have no other citizen comment cards. All right, Mrs. Melton, moving on.
Yes, item E was pulled from the original agenda, so we are requesting approval of items A through D and F through O.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Roth, seconded by Ms. Barnaby. Is there any other comments? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yep.
4,
Yes.
5.
Yes.
Okay, approved unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving on to business, advertising, petitions, hearings, and communications. Mrs. Singer is up.
You have, excuse me, second reading of ordinance 3096, an ordinance of the City of Bradenton amending Chapter 18, Article 9, Section 18-240 of the Code of Ordinances to adopt by reference the 2021 edition of the International Property Maintenance Code, amending Chapter 18, Article 9, Section 18-241 of the Code of Ordinances to update the local revisions to the International Property Maintenance Code, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. This is simply an update of the Property Maintenance Code, which is primarily what code enforcement relies upon in code enforcement actions. Mr. Reese is here to answer any specific questions you may have regarding the contents. But essentially, this is something that we do as a matter of housekeeping every few years as the Property Maintenance Code is updated.
Okay. Questions? So,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I will happily move for approval of ordinance 3096, because I think that when we adopted it the first time, I made the motion to do so, and I'm happy to see that we have followed up with this. Second.
Second by Ms. Coachman. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, this is a public hearing item.
All right, so,
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
No, because I looked, it wasn't checked there. So, I'm so sorry. So, I'm sorry. I'm going to rescind my motion and.
rescind my second. All right, good. All right, so at this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Chair will entertain a motion.
And now, Mr. Mayor, I'll be happy to make the motion to approve ordinance 3096, dealing with the International Property Maintenance Code approval. Second.
Second by Ms. Coachman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 2,
Yes.
3,
Yep.
4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
1.
Yes.
Carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Singer. Mrs. Melton?
Next, we have I'm sorry. Anyone wishing to address City Council during the following public hearing will please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and representations which you are about to present to this board will be truthful and accurate?
Okay.
Ordinance 3095, second reading and public hearing. An ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, providing for amendment to the City of Bradenton Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map, changing the future land use designation from urban village to urban commercial corridor for a property located at 201 13th Avenue West, Bradenton, Florida, and more particularly described in the attached Exhibit A, providing for applicability, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Good morning.
Good morning. Myra Schwartz, Planning Manager, to present this case. As Ms. Melton read, this is a request for a small-scale future land use map amendment to reclassify a property consisting of 3.46 acres from urban village to urban commercial corridor. The property is located at 201 13th Avenue West. It's case number CP 215648, ordinance 3095. The location of the parcel is just off of 301 at the intersection of 13th Avenue West. It's a triangular-shaped parcel that we're all familiar with. The current future land use designation is urban village, and the applicant is requesting to change that designation to urban commercial corridor. The zoning district is T5. This is regulated by the form-based code, and the zoning district is not proposed to change. The surrounding uses of this property, as you can see, you've got single-family residential to the north and to the northeast. You have multifamily residential to the south. Across to the east is Manatee County property. It is the community center, and it is right on the commercial corridor of 30141. The property is currently under the ownership of the City of Bradenton Community Redevelopment District and is within the central CRA and is currently vacant. It has been vacant for a number of years. The application is for a small scale, that means 10 acres or less, comprehensive plan future land use map amendment. If approved, the map change will be adopted by ordinance and submitted to the State Department of Economic Opportunity within 10 days of council approval. It does not require full state review. The CRA gave the applicant's agent permission to apply for this future land use map amendment for the purpose of expanding the allowable uses in order to develop a commercial center that would include grocery store, office, retail, and also is proposed to include a drive-through restaurant. However, drive-through facilities are not permitted. They are prohibited in urban village future land use. So the applicant is proposing to change to urban commercial corridor, which is adjacent to the urban village in this location, which does allow drive-through restaurants. Drive-through restaurants are a special use in T5 zoning, so should you approve this request, the applicant would need to come forward with a special use to permit a drive-through, if that's what he desires to do. The future land use amendment must be approved prior to approval of any site plan that includes a drive-through restaurant, and we do not at this time have a site plan that has been submitted to show us what he intends to do, other than preliminary reviews. Pardon me, in making this decision, you all must consider that changing the future land use category, when you do this, there are more changes than just the ability to make a drive-through. Everything that applies to the urban commercial corridor future land use category will apply to this change. Should the proposed development not happen for any reason, then the changes in the allowed uses and the residential density will still apply and will affect any future development of this site. So you need to consider the appropriateness of the changes that are relative to this location and the surrounding existing uses in the districts. The staff has found that the request is consistent with comprehensive plan. Your objective 1.2 in the future land use element describes the use of the future land use map. It's to guide the location of new development and redevelopment in a manner conducive to compatibility of land uses, sensitive to natural resources and natural hazards, and consistency with the availability of public facilities. And policy 1.2.1, to establish a future land use map. The future land use map shall govern the use of land in the city of Bradenton, defining types and intensities of uses within each category, and is hereby adopted as part of this comprehensive plan. The future land use categories of urban village and urban commercial corridor are both existing categories in the future land use element. I'd like to give you a comparison of urban village versus your UCC to see what changes would be made. Urban village is the existing future land use category. It's designed to develop with a character, lifestyle, and friendliness of a village based on concept of new urbanism, which is largely a pedestrian supportive area. It calls for a floor area ratio for commercial development of 7.0, And residential density, your base density in Urban Village is 25 units per acre, and a bonus density is available for low and moderate income housing of 70 units per acre. Urban Commercial Corridor is the proposed category. It's designed for medium-intensity uses commensurate with commercial roadways. The floor area ratio is the same here, 7.0. Your residential density is less. Residential density, your base density is 10 units per acre, and a bonus density for low and moderate income is 15 units per acre. I've got a list of uses here. It's, there are many of the uses are the same. The short story is that if the change is approved to UCC, what's going to be eliminated are your mixed-use climate-controlled storage facilities for this location, as well as public green space. What's added is hotels, motels, drive-through facilities, and social services. Your hotels and motels are a permitted use by right in T5. Your drive-through facilities, and this does include restaurants, banks, drugstores, anything that has a drive-through, would require a special use permit in T5. Social services are not a permitted use in T5. The site in T5 will continue to be regulated by form-based code, meaning that any development that happens here must meet the form-based code requirements for site plan, architecture, et cetera. In the form-based code, this particular site was envisioned as an urban format grocery store, commercial center, community center, gathering for retail and services. And that does remain a permissible use if this request is approved. The vision did include retail frontage with awnings, gallery, or arcade to promote new urbanism designs, walkability, and a sense of place. And of course, being on a commercial corridor, your walkability is somewhat limited. It would be more akin to the 3rd Avenue West, but the change would not make a difference to the requirements of T5 for development of this site. In conclusion, the property owner has requested the reclassification of the subject property to UCC, Urban Commercial Corridor, Future Land Use Category. A drive-through facility does require a special use permit in T5 zoning, so the application must be made in order to proceed with that specific development if you do approve this request. During the special use process, an assessment of the appropriateness of the use as well as the city's ability to serve it would be performed. Other uses of residential, retail, office, medical clinic may be permitted by right in T5. All potential uses and intensities in the UCC category must be considered in making this decision. Staff's recommendation, staff finds that the proposed future land use amendment is consistent with the future land use element of the comprehensive plan and is supported by the existing T5 zoning designation. Staff is recommending approval of the requested comprehensive future land use map amendment, case number CP 215648, ordinance 3095. Planning Commission did meet in public hearing on February 16th, 2022, and did vote unanimously to recommend approval of case number CP 215648, ordinance 3095.
Thank you. Any questions? We're going to have the applicant come up. Who does the applicant
applicant is
here?
here, yes.
Have any comments before we go to the public hearing? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and town councilors. Thank you very much for being available for us here today. I have with me, I'm Peter Diadio from Commercial Services Realty, the developer for this particular property. I have with me several people today that's here to give you information and as well as for the public hearing and to answer questions. My attorney Alan Prither is here today that is representing our company. I have with us Sherry Archer, our engineer and planner. I have with me Darren Austry, the architect that we've hired for the project. My son's also here if you need information from him. He's been in front of you before when I haven't been able to be present. And so I would, if Alan has anything to say, and then we can turn it over to Sherry.
Good morning. I'm Alan Prather. I'm an attorney. I've been sworn at many times, but I have been sworn today. And I I can tell you that this is something that personally is important to me, because way back when we entered an annexation agreement as Tropicana with the city, got the new Rossi building built, was able to establish a central CRA for that area to try and do things that would give some ability for that community. One of the pieces of property was the youth center that was at the address here. And it's sat vacant now for a long time. And I know it, you know, you guys are now the CRA, but it just takes a right kind of project to do something like this. And so I'll make it short and sweet. We agree 100% with the recommendation of your staff, and we hope you guys will support us and approve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Cherie Akers with BL Companies. We're the planning and engineering firm representing Peter on this project. Myra's done a great presentation. Not much I would add or just be repeating what she said. I would just like to emphasize that the intent of this request for urban commercial corridor is to allow a broader use of uses so that we can market to this property to a broader spectrum of industry, commercial industry. And yes, it does allow the drive-through under this, through the special use permit. We understand that we're obliged to abide by the T5 zoning. This property, as both people have indicated, has been vacant for many, many years, and it's been part of the vision for the CRA. And Peter is working with them to develop this property in the near future to provide for some commercial uses that are wanted and needed in the neighborhood to serve the community. And overall, it's a reduction in traffic, the reduction in the multifamily units going to the UCC. Also, what we are proposing, the grocery store, the retail, and a drive-through is also significantly less in traffic. It comes from about 9,000 down to about 3,000 or 4,000 trips per day. So it's quite a reduction and also still consistent with the T5. And obviously, it's a commercial corridor, a heavy commercial corridor along US 41. And none of the uses that we're proposing are inconsistent with the existing uses. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But that's a presentation. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, anyone else? Peter, before we go to public comment?
No, thank you very much. I think that you, actually Myra did a wonderful job outlining the information that we presented to her in the application. And if there's anything else that we need or anything else that you need from our team, we're available for that. And otherwise, I'll let you do your business.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time, we're going to open up the public comment. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public comment. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mrs. Coachman.
I move that we approve the approval of the request with, will expand permission of commercial uses of the property, creating new chances for development for a vacant property.
Second.
Didn't have my glasses.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 3095 by Ms. Coachman, second by Mr. Sanders. Any further discussion? Yes, sir, Mr. Roth.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to kind of comment on Mr. Prather's comments. This is important. I know it's important to you. It's important to this council. I remember when when Tropicana expanded over there, and that was a beautiful thing, and the roadway, 13th Avenue, was cleaned up and really nice. I remember back when we did the land swap, that from this property to the other one to open up over by Normal Light Park was a good thing. And I also remember when the previous administration kind of did a campaign stunt on this property that never really got followed through. So this board is trying desperately to follow through, on getting this project done. We worked real long and hard on this. This is another amendment. If there's another one in the future, I'll be all for it. This is something that I think it's important for every one of us that we just want to say, we did absolutely everything we could to get this done.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Coachman?
Yes, thank you. Definitely want to thank Myra for that excellent presentation. It was so easy to understand, and I think I'm going to make copies of that for some of the members in the community so that they can fully understand what is taking place. I go way back as well with that property. I was one of the kids that would hang out at that youth center. So when it was taken down, it was definitely the need for something of value to go back into that spot, because it was valued to have that resource, the youth center there. So I'm appreciative that Mr. Diageo is doing so much and working so hard to make this a reality. So just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Coachman. All right, seeing no other discussion, we'll start the vote in Ward 3.
Yep.
4.
Yes.
5.
Yes.
1.
Yes.
And 2. And 2.
Yes.
All right, approved unanimously. Thank you. Moving on. New business by department head, city attorney, or council. Mr. McClellan. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Jim McClellan, Director of Public Works and Utilities. First item that I wanted to discuss is seeking approval for the guaranteed maximum price associated with phases 2B and 2C of the Riverwalk expansion on the east end of the city. Get this up. Just wanted to give you a quick refresher of the phases that we're talking about. Phase 2A, which is at the eastern end, is the one that is currently under construction. Phase 2B is the section that would run from Manatee Memorial Hospital out to 6th Street East. And 2C is what would connect to the section, the end of Phase 2A, and take it from there to the east to 9th Street East. So 2B and 2C are what are being considered here today. 2D is the final piece that will connect those two down 6th Street, across Manatee Avenue, and down 9th Street. And that is a proposal from the architects that I have for you after this presentation. Just kind of give you a synopsis of where we are with Phase 2A. This was what was proposed as part of the master plan, some of the items that are out there. And just to kind of give you an update, these are the most recent aerial photos of the property. So this is looking to the south. This is the southern portion of the site, south of 2nd Avenue. You see up here, this is what's called a reflection circle. That is a concrete structure with knee wall seating that has a walkway that connects to the Reflections of Manatee property to the south. We have on-street parking being installed along 14th Street. This is the wellhead of the original spring that is going to have a hand pump attached to it with a water feature that will discharge into the system here. A new gazebo. The pad for the gazebo has been poured. The gazebo is expected to arrive in the next week or so to be constructed. The walkways here. This is the bioswale. This is a great lawn, just a lawned area, open space for a passive park.
Jim, a quick question on that.
Yes, sir.
Previous. I know from some of the residents around there's been some concern that maybe curbings and other trees were going to be removed, and I don't think that was just a rumor out there that started.
No, there's no, as far as outside of where we're at, there is no additional tree removal or curb removal that's going to be occurring. Other than along 2nd Avenue, there's a couple of places where we've got to put a drop curb for 88 crosswalk that's going to go across.
That won't affect
connect to
any
here.
other trees?
No.
Everything is set the way it is? And,
Correct.
And that, so.
And the design was intended to try to maximize the saving of the trees that are on the site.
Okay, thank you.
So this is looking from Second Avenue to the south at that Great Lawn area. This is the bioswale configuration. The last thing left to be done within the bioswale is there are vegetative plantings to be done in there to kind of soften the look of it and create some treatment for any of the stormwater that's in the bioswale. This is looking from the river towards the northern portion of the property. This is what would have been in the Powers property. The seawall along this whole area has been removed, replaced with riprap. There'll be, within that seawall is a natural shoreline. There'll be vegetation planted in that, again, to create a buffer and some treatment. The existing dock that was there has been removed, and you can see some pilings going in now. We finally, that portion of the project is underway. This is looking at the bioswale on that northern end. Again, vegetative plantings to be installed in here, but these are the walkways that cross over the bioswale to creating the path. If you can refer back to any of the original concept plans, it's starting to look like those concept plans for you. This is some of the plantings at that northern end as well, again within the existing tree canopy that was left and preserved. And then this is an aerial looking along the shoreline headed towards the eastern portion, to the western portion. So the break you see in the crosswalk or the walkway right here, that is where the boardwalk that's being built in front of the mangroves here is going to come in. So there's a structure that will come out into the river and then be brought back here. So that's why there's no concrete at that location. This is a dual swing, so seating that has a pretty nice view of the river as it relates to it. The next phase of the project, phase 2C, would pick up at the end of that concrete walkway there and build a observation tower on this point, as well as some additional park aspects at that location, and continue on. So that was just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at. The guaranteed maximum price that was approved by council for phase 2A was 5.3 and change $million. That included, from that we've included roughly $750,000 worth of direct owner purchases of materials and supplies for the project. The beginning contingency amount on the project was a little more than $195,000, and current balance of that contingency is about $95,000. So that's where the existing project 2A sits. 2B is, again, the section along Riverside Drive from 2nd Street East to 6th Street East, and essentially is a realignment of Riverside Drive. Again, taking the roadway, shifting it to the south, bringing the southern edge of the roadway up against the existing sidewalk on that southern side to create space on the north side for walkways and park amenities. The guaranteed maximum price that's been provided to us by NDC for this phase is $2.314,312. That includes a contingency allowance of $191,411, $262,000 in site furnishings, $174,000 in an electrical allowance, including $50,000 as a payment to FPL for services, $357,500 for a seawall handrail, $80,000 for milling and paving of the roadway, $213,000 in change for concrete, including curbing changes and sidewalk along that walkway, and a little more than $88,000 for utility modifications, basically moving some of the catch basins and adjusting moving a couple of hydrants and adjusting some other minor utility changes. Phase 2C, Riverside Drive, 9th Street East to 10th Street Court East. The biggest component of this is everything that's happening at the peninsula, where the observation tower will be built. The rest of it is essentially just building a sidewalk within the roadway of Riverside Drive over to 9th Street East, creating some seating with shade structures at the corner, and connecting into Glacier Gates Park as well. The guaranteed maximum price provided to us for consideration from NDC for this phase is $1.31009192. That includes a contingency of $108,000 and change. The biggest item is $385,000 for the observation tower itself. It'll be a 3-story structure and will be ADA accessible. $113,000 and change for site furnishings. That's the shade structures and things of that nature associated with the project. $115,600 allowance for electrical, including $25,000 for feed services from FPL. Little less than $200,000 in landscaping and irrigation, $80,000 for milling and paving, and another $128,000 roughly in concrete for concrete curbing and sidewalk along this area. Combined phases 2B and 2C GMPs totals $3,624,403.92. Sorry. Combined, that includes overall contingency of just under $300,000 for that phase. So with that, you're seeking approval for that. Mr. Allen from NDC is here if you have any questions about the guaranteed maximum prices. But this will allow, approval of this allows them to continue on with the next phases of the construction.
All right, questions for Mr. McClellan?
One question.
Mrs. Coker?
Can you go back to the slide of 2B, the overhead?
Or not to be?
Okay, right there is, what is that blue in the roadway?
That is an enhanced crosswalk, basically to allow folks coming down 4th to be able to access the walkway from the sidewalks that are in 4th.
Is this going to be the same stuff as what we did on Main Street with the river?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I think everybody'd shake their head no.
Okay.
That was not NDC construction, that was somebody else.
I understand. I looked at the plans for that one beforehand and never asked that kind of question, so I felt like I had to ask. Okay.
Good question, good question. All right, anything?
Mr. McClellan, you have extended that, back to that 2D. Making me dizzy.
Sorry.
It's 2B, I mean.
2B?
Yeah. On the right-hand side, me looking at it, you're going to extend that on down to what the city owns at 6th Street.
What we've talked to NDC about is modifying the seawall component of the project along there. We haven't added any sidewalk as yet along that stretch, because again, this was the original concept of what the plans were, was to cross over and connect to 6th.
That seawall is about to fall, or the top of the seawall, not the seawall.
The cap on top.
The cap is about to
wall.
fall in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's probably the ugliest thing in the whole project.
Correct.
So you're going to remove that and put a new railing?
The original intent was
like the rest of it match up?
The original intent was to install a railing, okay? But also hearing comments from residents and such about related to the protection that however ugly it is, wall provides. We're talking to NDC about modifying it, because again, the handrail that you saw, the handrail that's on the Riverwalk, is no longer made, so it's a specialty item. So that's why it was $354 some odd thousand just for handrail. So what we're talking about is constructing a small replacement wall of concrete on top of the seawall, and then placing a short handrail on top of it.
And that's the wall is for protection of the waves coming over.
Correct.
Have you got any renderings of that?
I do not.
No. Okay. That's not what I was, and I've been telling everybody that it's going to look just like the rest of it. Now, if that product is not available, that's one thing, but there's products that are similar.
No, absolutely.
And that wall, I would argue the point that that's a problem, because I don't see it. I live there, and I just don't see. I mean, the water comes across that in front of my house too, but so what? We just have to deal with it. It's only during high tide.
Understood. And the guaranteed maximum price that you're approving, or would approve today, if you so choose to, includes the handrail as the option. If we were to change it, we would come back with a modification.
Okay, but that's not what you said. You said you're gonna put a cap on it and the rail on top
That's
of
what
that,
we're-
which we don't have a picture of.
No, what we're talking is, that would be a change that would be made for consideration.
Oh, well, so that's not part of this presentation.
No.
Okay.
What this includes is the handrail.
It looks like the
removing,
rest of
removing the cap wall off the top of the seawall and installing a handrail as close as we can get.
Okay,
to
got
match
it.
the
No
existing.
problem. I agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Roth?
Yeah, I just, update you didn't, so Phase 2A looks like it's pretty close. When do you think that'll be completed, that we can have a soft opening on that?
Mr. Allen, I don't know if you want to speak to that. The longest item left, again, is the boardwalk associated with it. That started last week, construction of it. When they first told us, Duncan Seawall was the ones that are doing it. They initially told us it was going to take them 6 months to do it. We said that's unacceptable. So I'm letting him beat on them to bring that.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to deal with weather that we come into in these next few months and those kind of things. But we anticipate that more being closer to 4 months for the boardwalk. And I think we would, and again, it's up to the council, but we would prefer that opening to occur when the boardwalk's completed, because I think that's one of the, other than the bioswell, that's one of the important features of that. So anywhere from 4 to 5 months, I would guess from today, we would be completed with that boardwalk section.
So you're thinking sometime like the third week of September?
Yeah, September, the end of September is what we anticipated as being complete.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when are we gonna start in 2B?
As soon as approval is received for them to be able
Tomorrow?
to charge against it, I'll leave it to him to tell you whether they're
Because
going
it
to start
doesn't have
tomorrow.
any, there's nothing that holds that up that interferes with the other.
Permitting is out of the way. There are no Army Corps permits associated with this one that are going
They
to
can
slow it
start-
down. It's already been approved through engineering for site development, so we're good to go.
Good to go. And actually the other section too.
2B and 2C, yes.
They're both ready to go.
So is that a motion, Mr. Sanders, to approve that?
If they're willing to, you know, I want to get this done before you change your mind.
Yeah. Excuse me, one of the components is doing 2B and C. We actually then can take advantage of the efficiencies of working both those projects with one administrative team as opposed to doing them piece by piece. So we would like to obviously get started as quickly as we get our approval to do so.
I appreciate that, thank you. And there is no more architectural or anything that NDC needs from Kimley Horn? You know, no more hiccups out there that I'm gonna hear 2 weeks from now that, well, we don't have a plan for the electrical, we don't have a plan for whatever unknown. That's all done.
The only thing that's left to be produced is a final electrical plan, but they are carrying an electrical allowance in this bid already associated with what they know is intended to be part of the project. So there's just.
So they're able to put the underground electrical and stub it in, would that be true?
I'll let him tell you.
Because that was a problem.
Yes.
It's still a problem over there in the park.
Yeah,
with
technically,
FPL.
we would need some additional drawings on the electrical side to be able to place even the undergrounds of stubbing where those are.
So that's critical.
Absolutely.
And does anybody know when we'll get that?
I would have to get that information. I don't know right now.
That's
But
one reason I would like to have
expediting
Kimley Horn here to ask that question. When can you find out?
I can find out this afternoon.
And if it should be as soon as possible, I'm presuming that.
Correct.
None of this. I'm working on it. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve this based on the conversation we had for the guaranteed maximum price on Phase 2B and 2A.
2B and 2C.
2B, 2C,
Second.
4D, and all the above.
Okay, Mr. Sanders made the motion to approve. Mrs. Coker seconded it. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 4.
Yes.
5,
Yes.
1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3.
Yes.
Approved unanimously. Thank you, Mr. McClellan. Any further?
Yes, the next item is seeking approval for the final phase of the design for Section 2B of the Riverwalk.
2D?
2D, excuse me, did I say B?
I didn't know if I heard it right or wrong.
2D.
2D is...
2D, which again is the section that will take down 6th Street East from Riverside Drive back to Manatee Avenue, down Manatee Avenue, and then down 9th Street to Riverside Drive. That's the last piece. This price from Kimley Horn that you have before you is for both design and construction phase services of $253,990.
All right, I have one question, Mr. McCollum. On that, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about different directions to go if we cut through different streets and different things. And so if this is approved to start and all of a sudden something comes up where there is a better directional area to go, or through some houses that we were trying to get or work through, or other things change on Tarpon Point area with development, is there avenues to change that?
Absolutely, because, again, in an ideal world, we'd be able to come across 3rd Avenue with a punch-through. That's going to rely upon some potential help with development in the area, but we're going about the design with the standpoint that that's not going to happen. If we get down the line, as this is being done, the first step is going to be a survey of the whole thing. That's the last.
And here's what pushback I'm getting from the community. They've been told to guide it up there for business purposes. They're happy. So now they're hearing that we may not do it, and I'm getting beat up.
Yeah.
So I say, let's go ahead because we promised it. Because I don't like to say we're going to do something and, oh, well, we don't have the money. That doesn't sit very well with the community. And so I'm in favor of doing this, and I would make a motion that we continue to approve this section.
Well, we always talked about, though, if we could get the 3rd Avenue, was talked about the houses and the different things there, so.
But all
I was
that
on the
property's
council
been
at that
sold.
time. Not all of it in the way it's going. So.
All of it that we would need.
Yes.
Is this design pretty much just upgrading sidewalks and landscaping? I mean, we're not doing any kind of...
Well, let me just...
Beautification, basically.
So even if we did something different, it's not like we'd...
If we go back to the master plan.
All cosmetic, yeah.
To kind of show you some of the imagery of what would be there. So 6th Street is essentially providing, if you drive 6th Street now, you'll see people parked on the sides of the road on lawn area. They'll jump the curb and they'll park in there. The intent of this is to actually create on-street parking, widen the roadway, do some landscaping improvements, and sidewalk. There's no amenities that I would say are going to be located along this area. And the same holds true for, along Manatee Avenue, it's replacing some of the trees that are there that are in really rough shape, getting some irrigation in for those to make sure that they stay healthy. And then as you go down 9th Street literally is a sidewalk and maybe some trees. Because there's already sidewalk there. You're essentially taking people through a residential neighborhood at this point.
Mr. Roth, thank you.
I think that, we should continue on with the plans as shown, and, the 3rd Avenue cut-through, to be honest, I pressed for us to acquire that back in a real estate crash in 2008. So it's not, we'd like to get it.
If it happens, great. If not,
Yeah,
we're prepared.
I think that, but also I see the value in running this down to, Manatee Avenue where there's a business district. So whether Third gets cut through or not, I don't think should change the plans. That we just add a little to the budget.
Again, Sixth Avenue work is going to be a lot of road work, ripping out curbing, extending the curbing back, putting on street parking on both sides.
An old neighborhood with old sidewalks.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the Third Avenue was to make some connectivity, even if we have the Riverwalk and you can do it, but the connectivity so people wouldn't have to get on Manatee Avenue and Sixth Avenue to get to the hospital, whether it was a two-way or a one-way or whatever traffic flow. So
That'd be mostly vehicle, and we're talking about pedestrian.
right. Well, but I'm saying that if you have that cut through, it could always be a shorter way if people want to go. But the ultimate goal was to obviously get it connected in a way that everyone would use. And I think that's where you're going to see and again, we hear so much about development in that area, and it comes and goes daily, as Mr. Perry knows. And one day they've got this great plan, the next day they're out of here.
Correct.
So the ultimate goal for me as a councilman originally, and now, is to still have the connectivity and even the traffic flow, which might take some traffic off. If you work at the hospital and you live over there, it's about how you can get to your home easier, not having to cut over. So, and I travel that a lot when we come into town and go the different ways and look at the traffic flow on some of the streets by the first part of it. So it's a great thing, and I think it's something that we'll be excited. But my biggest thing was, if we are able to adjust some or leave that and adjust it, that we're not going to then get beat up even financially more. Because you can adjust things and not pay a lot, or you can pay a lot. I don't want a government lot.
Understood.
So, Mr. Sanders, you had a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. So we have a motion by Mr. Sanders, seconded by Mrs. Coker, to approve the Riverwalk Extension Phase 2D Design and Construction Phase proposal. So start the vote. And any further discussion? Hearing none, start the vote in Ward 5.
Yes.
1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yeah.
and 4.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
God bless.
Thank you,
Bless
Jim.
you.
All right, moving on, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Mr. Kelly. Mayor, Council, the item before you, Resolution 2215, is basically an allocation and appropriation for proposed projects using the American Rescue Plan Act funds. I am going to give a quick, about 3-slide PowerPoint presentation on the ARPA funds. It's roughly $10.8 million. And Mr. Kelly is going to talk to you a little bit about the technical aspects, I think, of that fund and the legislation itself. So as council is aware, in 2021, basically, the U.S. Congress, 2020, I'm sorry, the U.S. Congress and the President signed the American Rescue Plan Act. It was one of the first pieces, basically, of economic recovery for COVID-related types of activities. And in short, what it did was appropriate to states, local governments, and the like funds within certain eligibility categories. If we go to the next slide, please. And those categories were fairly well defined under what was called an interim rule. You could use the funds for water, sewer, stormwater, broadband, premium pay, and that was the interim rule, and that was the specific eligibility. There was a whole host of other kind of related categories that were included in the federal legislation and the CFR, the Congressional Federal Register rules that were promulgated. And everyone wondered, okay, is that going to be the final rule? Are we stuck with those eligibility categories? categories. You may well remember before council was the appropriation to use Ernst & Young for technical assistance, both in trying to put projects within eligible categories, get some more specificity on the elements related thereto, and put together a proposal for council on how to appropriately, legally, and regulatory spend this money. In the interim, what has happened is there was a final rule that kind of came out of nowhere. And the final rule said, we'll take those three categories, and what we'll do is we'll expand it basically to allow local governments and others to utilize up to $10 million in what they called lost revenue without actually proving lost revenue. Some folks said lost revenue was always in the category, but we were hard pressed to prove lost revenue when basically our revenue had went up at the city. That's what the problem was. And so the final rule basically opened up that. To date, Ernst & Young has billed us slightly over, I know we all heard about the, I'm sorry, we all heard about the technical assistance contract, and it was $75,000 for the first part of it, and then a compliance effort of $75,000. Since the rule was mitigated so substantially, we believe we're pretty much done with Ernst & Young. The last bill we received was what, $10,325. And I think that was money well spent at the time to basically move forward with the technical assistance.
Question on that.
We can come back to that, thank you. And City of Bradenton processes the vetting and eligibility priorities. So what we have now is the water keepers lawsuit. Next slide, please. It's important to understand this because what we're going to be asking for is a large share of this funding to go to water treatment and sewer recovery. This diagram kind of outlines the problem of what we're dealing with a Clean Water Act violation. And what it shows is that when it rains a lot, particularly in July, it goes into the ground and it saturates the water. The water saturates the subterranean soils and the like, where our sewer lines lie. And basically what happens is that rainwater penetrates into our sewer system. It gets in there through manholes, the cracks and crevices in aged, destroyed piping. There's different type of piping under the city, clay, there might be some cast iron and some other things that Mr. McClellan could kind of brief you on. But what happens is this process is what's called I&I, infiltration and inflow, meaning that waters, natural rain waters, infiltrate and inflow into our system. And it does that through a variety of these sanitary sewer lines, the manholes themselves, inlets, pump stations that have to pump. We have 56 pump stations. They have to all pump it to kind of a central collection point, and then what are called private laterals. This is all the subject matter of what Mr. McClellan and I and his team and our lawyers spend hours each week on with our lawyers. You don't see it in your offices, but I can tell you that each and every week, I don't think a week's gone by that we haven't done this for 2 to 3 hours each and every week on Zoom calls. It's crazy, but we're moving towards the settlement of that. That's the good news. Okay, so that's the sewer system itself. Second problem is this water treatment plant after it goes to the collector. And there's 5 filters on the water treatment plant. What happens when you have that much extra inflow into it, it clogs the filters. The plant has a capacity of 20 million gallons per day. And what happens is when you have to shut down one filter to clean it, you have to shut down the entire other 4 filters in order to do that because so much water is coming through there, basically. We usually, on average, run about 11 million gallons per day. So our capacity is 20, 11 is what our average is. Mr. McClellan long ago had seen this problem, and he started working with our consulting engineers to develop an engineering solution of clarifiers, mud pits, other types of things at the water treatment plant that will allow us to clean those filters without taking the other filters offline and continue with capacity. Those filters are kind of like a backwash on a pool. You put water going the other way, it shoots stuff out of the filter, you collect it and discharge it out. What happens when we have to shut down, it's called a bypass. That means that untreated sewer water bypasses the treatment system and goes directly into the river. We have a permit to put water into the river. A few days a year, we exceed that permit. That is the subject matter and the crux and the gravamen of the lawsuit against us, is that you exceed that permit, you're polluting, and we are. It's difficult to argue that because this is our data that puts it into the river. So what we want to do is fix that problem by fixing the sewer system, fixing the water treatment facility. Big money. Big money. And then ultimately, we want to move to a system that doesn't go back into the river, because right now, when we treat the water, we put it back in the river. It's treated to drinking standards. Theoretically, all of the toxins are removed, the process regarding disinfection, which is the main thing to remove the biological agents and chemical agents and the like, are completed. It goes back in the river. It's clean water. But by 2032, I think, we have to be out of the river pursuant to Florida state law. The solution is to take that treated water, put it back into an aquifer underground. It naturally attenuates as well as it mixes with other water, and it becomes usable water. That's kind of the long and the short of it. If we go to the next one. So the summary of the expenditures are, we're looking at trying to take out of the 10.8, roughly 8 million, 7.855 million for capital improvements to the water treatment facility that I've just outlined. The water treatment, the source facility. What will come before you for this lawsuit is a settlement agreement eventually, and we're fairly close. I think probably within 45 days, thereabouts, a settlement agreement will come, and we'll have to agree to do certain improvements and measurable improvements. So many miles of sewer lining each year, so many different fixes to the water treatment plant, ordinances that deal with these private laterals, a whole host of different things. And then as we basically move forward and do this work, we check them off so the plaintiffs can come back and say, well, something went wrong. Well, we did what we said we'd do. We funded it. We fixed it. We faced it. We fixed it. The next system is basically, out of all that funding, if we could, this highlights what the funding is specifically used for. There's legal fees, cost, compliance, all related to it that come into this lawsuit. And ultimately, if we can go to the next slide, there's an additional request on the appropriation for $1.145 million. That is the local match for a $2.4 million DEP grant that we had received, and we have to match that for resiliency and east side drainage improvements that are contained within Ward 5 and Ward 4. The outlet points, I think, are Ward 4. Most of the problem exists in Ward 5, from what I understand. And then there's a couple of smaller things that we thought were fairly high priority that we wanted to fund, which was the agenda management system. You heard one of the former counselors, I think, come up today talk about how difficult it was to get some information off our agenda system. I should say our city council agenda system, and that would help with Tamara and the city clerk's office with that. The cybersecurity issue that Mike T's having in IT, we have to make sure that we're battening down those hatches in today's world. The cybersecurity is just, the threats are increasing, effervescent, ever-changing, and the like. And obviously, we also talked about community-oriented policing in the cop house, which is an appropriation for improvements to the cop house. So that's the gist of it. Tom will stand for questions about the funding and the technical aspects of the appropriation.
Thank you.
Good morning, Finance Director Tom Kelly. Yeah, we got $10.8 million roughly in the initial allocation. We've received half of that, so we have that in a capital projects fund, and it's invested in a separate investment account, so we can track the interest we earn on that, and it all goes to the projects. It was very much a blessing when we got the $10 million allowance for the revenue loss, because we could not calculate a revenue loss for our city. So that freed up what we could use the funds for without really having to use much more of EY's services, because they were kind of giving us what was eligible for ARPA funding and what wouldn't be, based on the long list of projects we gave them. So these projects Mr. Perry has laid out, $9.9 million roughly. There's still a balance of about $859,000 that we have not allocated at this point. We have to obligate the monies to projects by the end of 2024 and have the money spent by the end of 2026. So there is time to relook at what we have, the balance of our money, and what we can spend it on. So.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Cohn? Mr. Roth? Oh,
Did Bill have something?
did you want to go?
I'll go last.
Oh, okay. So could we go back to the overview?
Which particular slides, right?
I think it was early on, like maybe, that was it. You just went back. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to comment on the state later with council comments, but so just to be clear, we have to get the water out of the river, and we're going to inject it into the aquifer.
Ultimately, that is.
It's the same, the cleaned up water.
That, it has to go somewhere.
I know. I'm just saying. I think I think a long-term thinking Floridian would say, well, I'd rather have the aquifer protected than the river, which goes into the Gulf. So, but we're just dealing with state issues. I'm criticizing the state.
I get it. Yep.
So, sarcastic. Okay.
No.
Yeah. I'll criticize the state again later. So the overview. This is great, and I'm glad that we're dealing with the Waterkeepers lawsuit and everything, but I'm going to comment on this again because it's something I've said for years now, and I'll say it again, that after Hurricane Irma, Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council did a overview of, it was called After the Storm, and we did an analysis of what went wrong. And actually, we lucked out with Irma because we didn't get hammered the way we expected. But early on, when we show the graphics here, we got the water going into the sewer lines, going through the pump station, going to the collectors, and going to the filters. I mean, I'm glad we're fixing anything we are. But one of the problems that we know, going way back, is the house drop lines that exist in the city that are old and need to be replaced. Clay, sometimes even just waxed paper, is where a lot of water is coming in. And we haven't addressed that yet, and we need to work that into our plan somehow of how some kind of assistance program to identify where those are. It's going to be the older neighborhoods. We already know where they're going to be, and then because one of the things that I've seen, I live in an area where we've got the lift station over on 8th Avenue, which goes down a lot when these big events go on, and it's stuff that goes in there, but it's basically too much water going into the lift stations. So sometimes our failure happens at the lift stations. So I'm glad we're dealing with the filters, but it still leaves a long-term problem that I think we need to address is how are we going to, I know there's a mitigation or assistance programs to where we can get people, I already replaced mine, so I know that they fail because I replaced my line. So, going from those old systems that basically it's just two clay pipes that go together with no seal or anything, it's just gravity fed. And then even in worse cases, they're older ones where they're kind of wrapped paper that I want us to go forward with this. This is a good plan. I'm still pointing out, we're still not addressing one of the big issues, which is the collection point, where all that rain clouds are and they go down. That's where we get a lot of problems going in there. And then it causes the pump stations to overload. So we're not even getting it to the filters. So it's a good start, but we're not done.
Mayor, Councilor Ruff, I think what you're referring to is private laterals.
Yes.
Is the technical term. I didn't really fully know what that was either. I'd heard the term before. So there's a series of different problems with private laterals. Jim and his folks have done a pretty good job of trying to identify a majority of where they're located. When you said we know where they are, but we don't know where all of them are because we have a whole host of folks that have done kind of stranger things. Some people tie their rain gutters into the system, from what I understand, so that it goes into the drain and the sanitary sewer, which isn't permissible. We're required under this thing to do things like a smoke test. So on a dry day when you don't have any water in that system, he closes off one end, he puts smoke in there, and then we see where the smoke comes from. And where the smoke comes from tells us where the breach is, basically. I think that's how it works. And sometimes they've seen it coming out of people's gutters. Yeah. The top of their house. That's completely improper. You know, so that's one issue, to try to eliminate that, and we're working within the settlement agreement, some requirements to do that. The other,
Mr. Perry, that is part of this plan.
it is part of the plan.
It's
Yeah.
on the
Yep.
red box, private laterals.
It is, absolutely. And ultimately, we will come back to you with a request for an ordinance that deals with that. We heard about the backflow preventers. Counselor Sanders, myself, and went out to a house in River Isles, I think, about a backflow preventer. When you work on your plumbing system, automatically, it requires you to put a backflow preventer in. And she said, well, I don't have a backflow problem. And we said, yeah, but when you work on your system, we require it, additional 1,500 thereabouts on that. It's kind of the same thing. We could require it under an ordinance to say basically that if you work on your plumbing system, you have to basically make sure that your private lateral is secure. And it becomes expensive, and there could be a program that you talked about as far as providing financial assistance to those folks. There's a whole slew of issues related to private laterals that we probably don't have time this morning to get into, but it's a really good point. And it's a point the plaintiffs are very concerned with. I can assure you about that, yeah.
Basically, that's.
It's a contributor. It's a
Too
it's a
much
big
water going in is the problem, and it's rainwater. It doesn't need to be treated. For us to be spending money, millions of
Right.
dollars to treat rainwater is ridiculous.
Yeah, it should be in the stormwater system. You're right.
100%.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
Mrs. Coker?
I just was going to ask, with all this project, what year do you think you'll be done putting water into the river?
I don't even know if we could answer that right now. Jim, you want to take a stab at it? I know he's got permits, and we've talked to plaintiff's counsel about, well, not fully about that, but go ahead.
Again, the law says we're supposed to be out by 2032. Our intent is to beat that. We are currently working on the injection well project. We already have the well pretty much designed. We have it located. We know where we're going to put it. We're working on the permit modifications to the treatment plant now. The overall process is probably about a 5-year cycle. So we hope before 2030 that we would definitely be out of the river for that.
Definitely in favor of this.
And Jim, while you're up there, one thing that we talked about a little bit was doing this now instead of waiting till it gets closer to the time is going to make it easier, because the supply chain, as you get closer, when everybody's trying to catch up, is going to make it more difficult to get it done because of that. And I think you're going to see a lot of cities that have 20, 30-year projects. They're not going to be able to get done by 2032 because they aren't as advanced as Manatee County and the city of Bradenton already is.
Correct.
We're doing some of that with the Evers Reservoir, with some of the things that were years ago, which people thought were in some of our sister counties and cities are relying on us to give them some stuff at this time.
Correct.
And part of it. So I think something being proactive like this and getting it done and then growing as we go will make it, put us ahead of the curveball a little bit. So.
And our consultant team is really helping us work on some innovative ideas for potential funding that we'll be happy to come back with when we've got them finalized. But some of them are out there in terms of it hasn't been done a lot, but it's a possible availability to us that we're hopeful to be able to pursue. So.
And being on the front end of the curve may make it a lot better for us.
Absolutely.
And Mayor, Council, I just want to kind of, again, give an attaboy and accolades to Mr. McClellan. When we got into this lawsuit, the lead attorney is a former EPA lawyer that has done all of the work in this area, in the Tampa Bay area for water keepers. You're talking about a bunch of municipalities, local governments, large local governments up in Pinellas County, Sarasota and the like. They know their business. They're good on that law. And their engineering team is very good. When they saw what we had already had in the works, what Jim's efforts were, we've already started sewer lining efforts. We've already, 60% design on water treatment, engineering solutions and the like. They were very surprised, and I think Mr. Rudisell would probably echo this comment as well, that we were that far advanced and really moving towards what we would have done anyway, I think is the best way to put it. And that just doesn't happen. Usually these things, which are kind of very expensive fixes and don't get much public benefit from the external, I guess is the best way to put it, aren't things that elected bodies focus on. Or engineer, public works directors and the like, they tend to deal with it when it comes up. He was way ahead of the curve, and his team. And I think it speaks volumes to what they do over there. So that needs to be said.
Mr. Perry, you brought up about the lining and the different things, and I think this is something that many years back, we bought a camera truck. And the camera truck, I'm pretty confident, I spent a couple days with that young man that we had at the time, way back, and he explained it all and showed it. And if you have any type of logistical thing on infrastructure, and whether you like it or not, but it was very interesting seeing how we could go with that camera truck, find a problem, and fix it right there. You didn't have to dig up the whole street. So I think that's something that will help us through some of this, with all of the, knowing where some of our bad situations are. And then that will even be the private laterals that we can tell from that.
And that's a big component of the settlement is talking about requirements for us to complete inspections of those segments of the sewer that we haven't gotten to yet. Some of them are going to be a challenge. They're in people's backyards and they don't know they're there, and there's manholes that are under fences, and there's manholes under memorial trees, and there's manholes under houses sometimes. So there's some challenges ahead, but the camera truck has been an absolutely wonderful asset to us. And it's kind of interesting because the settlement, and I'm sorry to bore you, but one of the things out of the settlement is they want us to rate the pipes, and there's a national system to use that you do. And the camera truck that we use has its own proprietary software that does that and evaluates it. And we've been battling with them over well, we've already evaluated all of our pipes this way. We're not going to go back and start from scratch to do all of them based upon this new criteria, because they're basically the same. It's just different terminology. So I think we've settled with them on that.
I think we've worked through that. Just this 75 miles worth of underground sewer pipe, roughly. Isn't that what it is? Linear?
Well, we have 195 altogether. There's 75 that we need to address.
Okay.
Mr. Sanders?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Primarily, Mr. McLeod, this is in the oldest section of town. Would that be a true statement, like Ward 4 or 5, possibly 3?
Yeah, I mean, virtually all of the new development that's been occurring is PVC pipe. It's the infiltration in that type of system. Not to say that it can't happen, but when it does, it's because something broke, not because the pipe.
So this is in primarily
older sections of town.
Older
yes.
sections of town, Old Manatee, because that's where we start. Lift station number 1 is located where?
Lift station number 1 was relocated away from the river.
It was, wasn't it?
And it was placed adjacent to.
That's the oldest. It's still number 1, right?
It's still number 1 on our list, in our hearts, but there were, I believe, 7 or 8 lift stations that were all built at the same time in 1954. They all looked exactly alike, and there's still some of them that need to go away. So.
Is anything that you just mentioned in the last 30 minutes involved taking at any of those lift stations? There's no money in there for any of that, is there?
Not in this, but we are still
I know
pursuing.
You got applications out there.
Yeah, we're still pursuing grant applications associated with getting rid of some of those.
Which was what we need, some possible lobbying help or whatever, because these are critical. And they're in the old neighborhoods, which is causing lots of problems.
The settlement agreement has a specific provision on lift stations, and the department and Jim and engineering have identified those lift stations that need upgrades, improvements, or generation power source type issues, and I'll leave it at that because I'm getting outside my.
But I do want to clarify one point that you were speaking to, Mr. Ruff. In terms of the lift stations themselves being overloaded, we made an operational change about 7 or 8 years ago, where we basically beat our pump station people to death saying, turn on the pumps, send it to the treatment plant, we'll deal with it at the treatment plant. I don't believe we've had overflows from a lift station in that time frame. But we've created the problem by sending it to the treatment plant to get treated, and we have more flow coming to the plant as a result.
Well, I was going to ask, so one of the things that used to happen, because I used to go over there and watch, I used to watch a system go down. I watched the guys go over there with a knife and cut the crap out. People would put baby wipes, diapers, and has that, and it only failed when we had all this water, because you're trying to cram as much water through as possible. It didn't fail on dry days. It failed on rainy days. So has that decreased? I mean, I know that we tried to get people to stop being irresponsible.
I would tell you that it is an annual problem so we're coming out of now the dry season. And during the dry season, the flows are minimal in the sewer lines. And it takes flow to move solids along, whatever those solids may be, whether it's a rag or anything else. When the first rains hit and you get that heavy flow coming into the pipe from the groundwater, all of that crap, all of those rags, all of it ends up, and we are constantly pulling pumps, de-ragging citywide.
So when
it's still a problem.
when you're saying it's fixed, that probably hasn't been fixed.
Nope,
Okay.
has not.
Mr. Perry, just, and Mr., I just want to make a statement. I know
Go
you're not
ahead.
done, but
Go
it's just a
ahead.
statement for our meeting time. We're going to take a hard break at 10:30. So I just want to, I know we talked about 10 o'clock, but it's got to be 10:30 for a person getting here.
So, Mr. McClellan, it comes in to the river now along,
I'm sorry, what, sir?
it comes into the river now, presently, along 9th Street East?
The outfall pipe from the treatment plant, yes, it flows down 9th Street East.
And is there only one?
There is only one pipe. It's
Well,
a 36-inch diameter.
And so that's close by. That's what ward's that in? Actually, that's probably 4 or 3.
It actually starts in Ward 5 and ends up in Ward 4.
Yeah, okay, so we understand where me and Mrs. Coachman understand where all it is. Where's the new aquifer going to be, if it's going to take 5 years to stop?
It's not a new aquifer. The well itself will be located at the wastewater treatment plant.
It will be at the wastewater treatment plant there on where it exists now.
Correct.
So, has there been any studies on anything that says that they can handle that?
Yes.
There has?
Yes.
Okay. So it will stay there. Okay, so now that makes that place even more permanent for life, which there's no problem. I don't have a problem with that. So no pump stations, but we got that on there, the aquifer, and the lawyer fees. What do you think they'll be? I know that we guesstimated them before, but I didn't see anything in here to take it out of that. Are we just absorbing that through the general fund?
Well, the beauty of federal lawsuits that have attorney's fees provisions is that not only do you pay for your lawyers, but if you lose, you pay for their lawyers too.
Sometimes
I think
that
that's as
happens in
simply
other
as I
cases,
can put
too.
it. It's one of the most painful things that a defendant has to do, is pay for the other people's lawyers.
I know.
We are in the process of negotiating that. I think it's fairly reasonable for the amount of work that's been done. It's going to be in the low 6 figures, hundreds of thousands.
300,000?
A little bit less than that, I think, is what we're looking at.
Oh, write down 300,000.
Yeah, you write down what you want, but I think
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a little less.
So we're
yeah.
not going to be, well, good, congratulations.
I don't know if it's good, but I appreciate it. Yeah.
So
it's still a
I don't
lot.
see any of those numbers in taking it out of the ARPA funds.
They're not in ARPA funds.
Okay, and it's possible, I mean, you're just going to take it
No,
out of general fund?
actually, that's a really good question. One of the things you clearly can't use ARPA money for
It's lawsuits.
is for pay loss, that part of a lawsuit. Yep.
Okay, so $8 million is obviously is long overdue. I'm for it 100%. I just had some questions on some of the details. The $10K that we've already spent with Ernst & Young, are these the recommendations that they have given, or is this just from in-house staff throwing this out to us? What has Ernst & Young done for their $10,000?
Ernst & Young doesn't give programmatic recommendations. They don't give priorities of what they think a local government should spend their ARPA money on. They do an assessment of its eligibility, basically. When we started under the interim rule, I vetted basically each and every department and said, can you tell me what your overall needs are as it relates to high priority areas? And we had a 6-page spreadsheet or so. Yeah. And we had repeated meetings. Mr. Kelly and his staff was instrumental in setting these up and in working with Ernst & Young. And we would have our directors and go over this sheet, and we gave them priorities. It was like a category 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so we proceeded down that because what we wanted to do was to do two things. One, ensure that we had an expenditure recommendation that fit within eligibility as confirmed by Ernst & Young. And secondly, that it met programmatic needs. Once they changed the interim rule, it kind of it didn't upset everything, it just opened everything up that made it much more easy to work within the eligibility categories.
I understand. So basically, they give us $10,000 worth of monitored advice.
Yeah, and what that involved is we had probably, 5-6 meetings with them, which was Zoom meetings. Our directors were on the line. They had 2 or 3 people. Then Tom would take it and say, I'll work with them after the fact to drill down on it and the like. And so, I think they did pretty good work.
So why are we paying them another $75,000? What's the $75,000?
I didn't say that.
Oh, I thought you was in here. I thought
I think
finance $75,000 ARPA with Ernst & Young $75,000. That's part of the $10 million.
I don't know where.
Item number 2.
Item number 2.
$75,000.
Yeah, that was originally what the contract.
Oh, okay. Well, this was what you presented for me to look at today, or.
Yeah, but.
Okay.
So that's wiped off. We got $75,000 more at the bottom line of 859. So
the contract is still open, so we can still use them if we need them for anything. But we basically we don't think we're going to need them for much at this point. So we probably have a lot of that money freed up.
We didn't have a guarantee of that 75. I thought we had a 2-portion guarantee of 75 and 75.
No.
Okay, I read it, but it's 200 pages. And
it's by the hour.
By the hour, I saw that $300 an hour, so forth. So if we're basically spending almost all of it today with this, is there going to be any need for them at all? Hardly.
No, they did help us filing the quarterly report last time because the Treasury's website has some quirks to it. But we don't think we're going to need them for that. But if we do have another $900 to spend, basically, if we have questions about that. But we're pretty confident now with that standard allowance of $10 million that we'll be able to figure this out ourselves.
And just as a kind of addition to that, Tom has recruited Heidi, who's a CPA that's working out quite well in our accounting finance department. And half her salary is actually, I think, paid.
It is.
By ARPA, because she's managing the ARPA monies.
Who's this?
Heidi.
Heidi.
Oh, there. I'm sorry.
She's in the back there. Heidi,
Come on up. Let me just. Why don't you introduce Heidi?
Sure.
Yeah, she's an awesome employee that's been with us for about 6 months or so now, I think.
Yep. This is Heidi Warnamundy, and she's a CPA. She came to us from public accounting. She did a lot of tax work at her previous firm. But she's picked up on governmental very well. She's done a lot of financial statements in the past, so she's kind of transitioning to do our ACFR, with me, so she's learning that aspect. But she picks up quickly, and she's doing payroll, capital assets, so taking a lot of workload off of Linda, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Welcome, and we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
At first, I didn't know we hired somebody. Congratulations. I like people in finance. Once I've talked to him first. couple items here. Again, I'm all for the 7.8, roughly $8 million. That's, to me, it's a no-brainer, and it always was, and that's what I've always said, that we know 80% of the money we're going to spend is going to be in infrastructure. So that's the reason I am hard-nosed on Ernst & Young, giving them any money to tell us what we already know. I don't need to pay somebody to tell me what I already know. And I'm here to protect the city's funds, so I'm not a real big advocate of consultants from past experience. So we got in here another $75,000 for police community buildings. We have 2 now that's not used. And in talking with the police chief, she never was in favor of them because it separates the police in different parts, and it's hard to manage multiple locations. So, and then on top of that, there's another $120,000 for furniture. So that's nearly $200,000, but we have $0 for premium pay. And I bet if I ask every police officer if he'd rather have premium pay or a substation with $120,000 furniture, I bet I would get a premium pay.
That was in the initial.
And that was in the initial ARPA. As a matter of fact, it was because the ARPA came out of the basic context of the coronavirus put us in a world of hurt. Yeah. And so the and cities were suffering with police, fire, public works having to do the job because there was no other choice unless we want all these things to back up. So we had to. It was, and a lot of other cities have already paid this out. So I'm questioning why no premium pay is there for police, fire, and public works. We've just forgot about it.
If I can just respond to the first comment, what I've told you before is that we had 2 substations, the District 2, which was readily used, a needed facility because it had the infrastructure, computers, internet, bathrooms, storage for my Explorer program, for my traffic units, a necessary building. It's become, as you all know, run down, and the alternative came to us in the form of this COPS building, which is going to be an incredible facility. The neighbors are excited about it. It's going to house our traffic unit. It's going to house multiple programs, so I hope for kids. The one building that I said was not an effective use for us was the one out east, only because there's an expectation that we staff that because it's in a neighborhood, and I don't have the staffing for that, and we lost our neighborhood liaison that would sit in there and staff that, and it become run down. Just into the comment about premium pay, you contacted me on that last week, and my statement to you was that, you know, when it comes to pay for officers, my concern is always that they get a check and they deposit it, and the next day, I'm faced with the same problem with people coming in with overall pay and benefits. And my desire, and what I think is happening, is that the city come up with a comprehensive plan to address pay and benefits, and that we not necessarily seek to piecemeal it by just giving a quick payoff. And so I just wanted to make sure my position in my conversation with you, and we've had several over the past week or 2, was clear. So, you know, initially we put in for premium pay, but then we embarked down that road for contract negotiations, and I'm confident that those are going in the right direction that could address, you know, that issue as opposed to just a quick hit.
Thank you, Chief. I'm well aware of our conversation and where you stand on that, and I'm hoping that your employees are supporting you. Chief at Fire, do you feel the same way? You don't want any premium pay? Yes or no? It's just an easy question. Yes or no? So if not, it's a dead deal as far as I'm concerned.
We looked at the
say the stipulations on that. The stipulations on that, and we had about probably maybe 7 people that would affect that we ended up, it was questioning whether they would actually qualify based on the work they did during that time frame, and it was like certain admin folks. So, you know, there were stipulations we looked at, but, you know, at the time, it wasn't worth pursuing, so.
You didn't have firefighters go into homes where COVID was at?
Employees in, Mayor,
Well-
and say, would you prefer a fire station or a paycheck? I bet you most of them are gonna say, I need a paycheck.
Mr.
Police,
Perry, I'm asking
fire,
the chief
public
questions,
works.
if you don't mind.
And so I can bring everyone up, and we can do that.
I'm going to ask everyone to come up. Thank you.
Let's do that.
Chief.
Well, I'm gonna say we're not.
Let's stop
we're
here,
not
let's
gonna-
stop, let's
we're not-
stop.
We're not gonna put it.
This is a business meeting, we're talking about things, it's not, I don't want to start to get into where we're putting individuals on the spots at this moment. I don't think it's the right thing. I think it's worth asking a question, getting an answer, and moving on. I think there's contract negotiations going on with several unions right now that we have that has to work through. We know where we're at in this, and I think we need to work forward. We know what we need to do. Mr. McCollum's come up with the plan to get us in a spot where we can be in a better spot before 2032. And, you know, everyone has individual opinions, which I mostly always respect, because you can have it. But I think to individually call up and put a person on the spot is not the right thing here.
Come on, that's not the case. When we first talked about this $11 million, I mean, I saw 3 department heads saying that, yeah, we want that money for premium pay. And the chief of police was the biggest advocate for it. So now it's wavered off to where you don't want it. That's fine. You know, fine. It's easy to not give you money. Heck, that's a good one for me. So if you're I just want to make sure that it's public record that you're not wanting it, because I thought that was the primary purpose, that and some infrastructure of the ARPA plan. So if we're not doing, and by the way, Mr. Mayor and Jane, you said you didn't like the ARPA plan because it's a tax on our grandchildren. So I hope you've moved away from that and are not going to say we shouldn't accept it, but I will accept it because it's free. Because it is free to
Well, you're
us.
kind of restating my position, but what I was saying was, my grandchildren are going to be paying for it, all of our grandchildren are. I wanted those to be projects that they're going to be enjoying. So I would say that what you're advocating for, these quick payments, they'll be gone.
I'm not advocating for it. It was requested of us council by those departments. I didn't advocate for it. I advocated to push and get it through because they asked for it. It didn't affect me at all. Matter of fact, I think that's great. I mean, we just saved probably $300,000. That's good. Okay, end of story. I just got the
Mr.
answer.
Sanders, I would like to respond to, you put me in with it, Mr. Mayor, and Jane, Councilwoman Coker, but I feel the same way that Councilwoman Coker does. I said I want projects, if we're going to take this money, you know, because I was not on this council when they made a decision not to take the Horizon money, I think it was, years ago, BP money, right.
$1.5 million.
Right, I was not here, so I didn't have a choice in that. People sometimes throw me into it. I wasn't on the council at that time, but.
I think you were.
I wasn't.
No, he wasn't.
I wasn't.
Because I was
So,
sitting here.
That's the
Oh,
thing
you
is,
didn't take it, okay.
facts matter.
No.
Facts matter here.
I don't know.
So,
That's
yeah.
history, right?
Right, well, but you bring up history, but then you don't want to defend history. I was not here, so what I said with the ARPA money was that I felt that it's going to tax our grandchildren, and the biggest part of doing that is let's do projects that are going to help our grandchildren. And this project right here is definitely, I believe, going to help our grandchildren and the future of this city's history. So that's the facts, and facts always matter. You can't take one portion of one sentence out of something and then throw it out there, and that's wrong to do. So
Okay.
we're going to keep moving
I just
forward.
read the Bradenton Herald, and
Right.
that was a quote from you, so, I'm sorry they got it wrong.
There's other things in the Bradenton Herald that are about everybody that, you know, they get it wrong.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
all right, so-
I'm still,
right, so go ahead, Mr. Sanders. If you have questions for individuals or staff members, you know, we'll get them up here.
okay. $450,000 ARPA funds for executive pay.
Yes, that seems like a large number, but that's over the 5 years of the ARPA money, and that's half of Heidi's salary as a senior accountant and half of an IT project manager. So it just adds up to that much over that long period of time. But they're,
5 years is, this has to be done by 2026, which is about 3.5 years. What's 5 years?
well, that's what I put in there initially when we were first doing this, so.
Have we already used some of
And
this
it's
for
the-
executives we've hired?
I'm sorry?
Have we used some of this for the executives we've hired?
Yeah, Heidi's been getting half of her pay that way, and the IT guy, I think we just recently brought on, so.
So we've used this we've used this already before the request, how to use it.
Oh, their salaries are already approved in the budget, but,
So it's coming out of the budget, you're gonna replace the budget with this money.
right.
Okay. I just wanna be clear on.
Yeah.
But again, it's $450,000. How do you justify that? And what has Ernst & Young said about this? To me, I have a problem with $500,000 of executive salaries when we have public utilities employees that have a hard time paying their rent. I'm sorry. I used to be the executive and I took it. But,
Well-
Is
it was at the
executive?
loss of
No,
somebody
they're-
else, though.
They're making market rate for the jobs that they're in. I mean, they're not
The
getting.
terminology there a little bit, it's not executive salary is
Right,
the upper, it's the
right. Yeah, I'm
more
sure they'll show
management
somewhere
level,
that
right.
Executive salaries. These are people that are working. They are not, CPAs, IT people, salaries, I don't know, certainly beyond blue collar because it's skilled educational labor. When you go to be a CPA, presumably you have to have, I think it's 30 hours of accounting or
At
so to
least.
sit for an exam. You have to take an exam, the lawyer's exam, the CPA exam, the doctor's exam. Yeah, these are professional, well-trained people.
I understand what it is. I
And what
didn't
the
really
deal
see it
is
in
that
ARPA,
it's for 5 years, the period. So if you want to break it down, it's probably about 80,000 a year, somewhere between 80 and
Well,
90.
if it's
for two
500
people,
divided
half
by
salaries.
$500,000 a
Now,
year.
I know how that could be manipulated in some sort of misstatement of fact, whether it's on a newspaper or a TV story, or even a political campaign. I get how that could be manipulated.
knock it
But
off.
I can be honest with you and tell you that right now, it's executives is the wrong word to use. Professional salaries would probably be a better name.
Yeah.
And when you say the amount, it should be 4 or 5 years for two people. And then do the math from there. And most people would go, that's pretty reasonable for what they're hiring.
Well, I've seen the pay.
I would argue in support of it.
I
That's all
got you. I know where you stand. But I argue with you that the senior accountant and IT projection manager, I've seen the salary range and it's executive pay. Would you, your question, I mean, if you want to pull it out from HR, I'd be glad to debate it with you, but, let's just,
Perhaps it's a
let's just move on.
distinction. Perhaps it's a distinction without consequence. Maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, you're probably right. Okay, I'm not in favor of that, obviously. I'm not in favor. I really don't know if we're going to spend $75,000. And I know the county has put out 15% of their $80 million for affordable housing. We're in a crisis right now. And I think as a council person, one thing I can do is help what I can, where I can, when I can. And now this money is something we can do. I've recommended 15%, just like the county, to go into affordable housing funding for people to pay rent or remodel their homes or make purchases or tax incentives. That this is something that can be done through Affordable Housing Committee and planning. But I would recommend that's $1.5 million. And so I said, well, where are we going to get it? Well, we got $860,000 here that we haven't spent at the bottom. We got $450,000 of executive pay. We've got maybe not going to spend any more money in $75,000, and I don't think we need a police substation for $200,000. I think all that money needs to go into affordable housing for the people in our community, and that's where I would vote to approve the $800,000 and the 1.1, but that's a matching grant until we receive that grant match to 1.145. That's what you have there. That's not, in fact, I don't even know how those numbers add up, but anyway, that would leave about 15% of ARPA money going into affordable housing. And so my recommendation, and if you want a motion, I'd be glad to do it, that 15% goes into affordable housing. And,
We've got other council people on the board that want to talk.
well, I said I'd want to be last, so I assumed I was last.
Well, that you don't get to pick that, that's my job, so I'll take care of that.
Well,
Mrs. Barnaby?
ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hadn't really intended to say much about this, but, you know, I was on the council and was the representative to the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program when the money came down from the BP oil spill, and there were two different pots of money. There was money for people that had direct environmental issues because of the oil spill, which Bradenton and Manatee County did not have direct environmental issues. But there was another pot of money that the judge set aside as basically a punishment to BP for, number one, underreporting how much oil they were taking out of that well. They were severely underreporting and were not paying the taxes on that. And that was the money that the city of Bradenton could have qualified for. And that was the money that we were looking at trying to get. And that was the money that 3 members of the city council at that time voted not to take. And the mayor at that time didn't support taking it either, saying that this is why people hate lawyers. So I do remember that, and Mr. Mayor, you were not sitting in this seat at that time, it was me. When I look at these funds, and I remember when we were originally discussing whether or not we should look at them, whether we should go after them, I remember very distinctly Councilwoman Coker saying that she believed that these funds should be used for capital investments, an investment in our community that was going to benefit our children and our grandchildren, that we're going to end up paying for that. I do remember we discussed premium pay at one point. And looking at this, we're looking at that we have money set aside in case we have to re-engage with Ernst & Young, and that may not happen, so that money may be available. And there's also remaining funds down here. We are now in negotiations with how many unions, Mr. Perry?
3.
2, 3? And this might be a question for our labor attorney, that should we do premium pay while we're in the middle of these negotiations, is that acceptable at this point in time? I don't know. I don't want anyone to accuse the city of trying to manipulate union negotiations by using premium pay as an incentive. And that's why I think that I'm not giving up the floor yet, Mr. Sanders. I think that may be why the premium pay issue is not on this proposal that we have in front of us here. Doesn't mean that we cannot look at using the remainder for something like that at the appropriate time.
Correct.
And that is where I'm coming from. Having a community-oriented policing area in a neighborhood that wants it and is excited about having it, again, to me, that is an investment in the community. Having our technology group be able to not have hackers come in and destroy or hold our information ransom, I think is an important thing. But that's my opinion at this time. And I'm I'm finished, Mr.
All right,
Mayor.
and we're at the 10:30 break time, so before we continue this conversation, we're going to, I guess we break out of this meeting,
Recess the meeting.
recess the meeting, and we'll be back at 11 o'clock.
Mayor?
Just for a moment.
Mayor, we're requesting a recess to move into executive session. The city of Bradenton hereby gives notice that pursuant to section 447.605, subsection 1 of Florida statutes, today on Wednesday, March 23rd at approximately 10:30 a.m., it shall hold a public meeting between the mayor, the city council, the city administrator, and the city's chief negotiator, Gray Robinson, attorneys, for purposes of determining collective bargaining strategy during upcoming union negotiations between the city of Bradenton and the Florida Police Benevolent Association. I believe this advisement meets the satisfaction of Florida statutes to convene to executive session.
Mr. Rudisell, we're all set with that?
Yes.
Yes, sir. All right. So we will take a recess and reconvene here at 11 o'clock. So we'll go up to the council. Only 2:15 before we,
No further comments on the resolution pending. I just want to close out that we met in shade pursuant to the advisement that I provided. Only matters that were within the scope of that advisement were discussed.
thank you. All right,
I have a motion.
okay, yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this ARPA funds and approve everything on here with the exceptions of the $450,000 of salaries, the $195,000 for police substation and furniture, and use the $860,000, and I just added that up, and that's $1.5 million to use for affordable housing or housing assistance.
The motion on the floor, is there a second? Because of a lack of a second, the motion dies.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 2215 as presented.
Okay, Ms. Coker has a motion to approve as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
Mr. Roth's out of the room, 4.
You want me to vote for him too?
No, yeah, both,
No.
and 5.
Yes.
So the motion carries 3-1. All right, unfinished business? Anything, Mr. Perry?
No, sir, not this time.
Okay, all right, thank you. Go to council reports, Ms. Coker?
Oh, great, I'm first. Okay, first off, I'd like to acknowledge the Ogden family, Jane Ogden, the mother of 4 beautiful daughters and a pillar in this community. She was actually a president of the Women's Realtors Association. She was one of the founding members of the Junior League, and she passed away this week and has left. She just was, a wonderful woman, and I wanted to pass my condolences on to the Ogden family. Also wanted to bring up that we had a meeting with the Village of the Arts, not Village of the Arts, sorry, Village Green Homeowners Association to discuss the recycling, and I wanted to publicly thank Jim. He certainly came through and was able to answer all their questions. And as we know, it's been a difficult decision, but I think with education, people are starting to understand a little bit more why we did what we did, and we're hopeful that we can get to a cleaner recycling program. But I think we should have as many of those type meetings with the community, possibly do some, open meetings, just so that we have a chance to talk directly to the citizens, because a lot of them are still having some misconceptions, and so I just found it helpful. But I think that's all I have.
And Ms. Coker, I know that most residents I've talked to, when you get and tell them, they understand it, but they're not always jumping with joy about it, but they understand the process. And the ones that I've been to are similar. They're happy we're there reaching out to them. So thank you, good job. And obviously through our Public Works and also our PIO doing a great job with that. So thank you. Ms. Barnaby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too had a kind of town hall neighborhood association meeting over in Pine Brook, and I would like to thank them for their invitation to participate in that meeting. And the attendance was very good. The questions were very good. I would like to thank Mr. McClellan and Mr. Cho for being there, and Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining us as well. To explain, again, issues dealing with the recycling changes and how it can work in a condominium setting like Pine Brook. So they were very appreciative of everyone coming, and they also said some very wonderful things about our sanitary engineers, our staff that run the garbage trucks and the recycling group, and they appreciated everyone's participation, and they had some really nice things to say about the ladies and gentlemen that they work with or interface with the solid waste program. I also think that the YouTube video that is now available is an excellent tool that can be used, and I know that it is going to be on our website and that people can access it that way. But I would like to thank all of those that worked with that and to get that information out, because in the absence of fact, rumor is king. And there's a lot of factual information about why we had to do what we had to do in order to sustain our garbage program and to get back to weekly yard waste. And I think that that's an important thing that most of our older neighborhoods that don't have common areas and aren't in a condo association might not fully understand how yard waste can impact our community and how it can make a neighborhood look bad. So I'm hopeful that we're taking these steps. They're kind of painful right now, but we've never missed a garbage pickup, and we hope to get back to the yard waste weekly pickup as well with that. Want to announce that the Art Center Manatee is going to be having their fundraiser event. They only do this every other year. It's a great event. The name of it is Snatch It, and you buy a snatcher ticket and you can come in, and there's beverages, there's food, but there are packages that you can snatch. The tickets to participate are $125, but you are guaranteed to have a package that's worth at least $250. And I've seen one of the original artworks that's going to be included in a package, and it's valued at over $3,000.
Whoa.
So it's a fun event. Highly recommended if you like art or you want to support the Art Center. The funding from this goes to the scholarships with the kids program, and also to provide the Art and Healing program, which is a program that is put on by the Art Center to assist individuals that are dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's. So it's a very important program that we do, and I'm happy to support it. Also, mark your calendars, May 14th is the day for the Ballard 100th anniversary event. It will begin at 4 p.m. They would like everyone to know about it, everybody to participate if they would like to. I was there yesterday dropping off the donations that many of you all have given to the school. They were extremely appreciative. I got a tour of the school, and the only part that is there from the time that I went to school there is the playground, which thankfully now there's a fence between the playground and the Wears Creek area, because when I went to school there, the alligators used to come out and sun themselves on the, and there was no fence. We were just told, don't go over there. And we apparently listened pretty well. I don't remember anybody having a problem with the alligators, but now I think it's, as a parent, I'm looking at it going, what were they thinking? Having it fenced off is a much better idea. And the only existing building that's there when I was there is the auditorium. They preserved the historic auditorium, and that was quite fun to go in and see. So that is, again, May 14th, starting at 4 o'clock. And then I would just like to thank the mayor, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the council members, and everybody that participated in a birthday surprise for me on March 18th. For a little girl that grew up in Bradenton to be able to, A, sing the national anthem and be recognized in that historic facility was such an honor. And I really appreciated it, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roth?
Yeah, thank you. First, we have a county meeting tomorrow, and the time is not on that, the agenda? 1:30. 1:30? Okay. You mentioned Ballard and the fencing. To be quite honest, I know we have a school board member out here. There was not fencing around the playground until a couple years ago. And when I look at that community, when that school, and that community that it serves, to be locking those kids out of that playground, I don't think is a great idea. And I know other schools in neighborhoods. I think we should request that they reconsider that, because that's a public asset. The playground is paid for by tax money, and I think the children should be able to play in their school playground like I did and you did and everyone else. That's another thing. We had a meeting, we had a citizen's comment today that I would like to respond to, but with the supposed new rules we've got, we can't do it the way we've always done it, and I want to reconsider. I know when we're going to talk about that, because I don't remember when we voted to change that, and I would like to correct that, because some statements were made that I would have liked to have commented on.
You had opportunity at the end of it.
Well, it's not the same.
Right, but I mean, and we'll go over that when we talk about it. We've got it
Correct.
in the-
We're not, well, I'm going to keep saying it until we get there.
That's perfect.
Okay. And then lastly, I got an observation request, and I know that this has been an issue that I've heard of in wards 1 and 2 and 3, and it's coming to a ward near you. There is a invasive species called Muscovy ducks, that they're from South America, and they are a nuisance. They are a horrible nuisance. And if you have a small retention pond and 2 ducks, and someone decides to feed them, you're going to have 40 ducks in about a year and a half. That has happened in our area. It's amazing how 2 ducks can multiply to 60 in a few years' time. They're just, I have no idea why God made these creatures, but he did. Anyway, but they have no natural predator here, so they basically outgrow our wildlife in an astronomical rate. And I know that when I first notified Fish and Wildlife about this, they said they were going to do something about it. Well, now it's been now nothing has happened since I talked to them. It's years later. We have literally 30 times more than we did. And the one thing they do now is they say that we don't, the Fish and Wildlife, we don't do that. So that's what they decided to do. It's a state where, you know how the state's always trying to tell us what to do? Unless there's a real problem, and then they say, whoa, we don't do that. So anyway, their solution, the state's solution to the problem, is that local governments pass an ordinance to make duck feeding illegal. So you know, wild ducks are illegal. You can't feed wild ducks. So Muscovy ducks, well, we don't know what they are. They're an invasive species. They're certainly, you can call them wild. But basically, there is a ordinance that was passed unanimously in Pembroke Pines and works great. And I would like for us to look into that because it's the only way we're going to get ahead of it. Anyway, so I don't know how to start a process like that. So I just suggest it here and it's the beginning?
Mr. Rudisil?
We could take a look at that and see kind of what the options are and bring back some discussion on it.
Okay, because the state has literally walked completely away from it right now, and they're now throwing the ball into our court. So I think we should act on this because I know firsthand that it can become a horrible, horrible nuisance.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you. Mr. Sanders?
Thank you. First thing, we had a ex-councilman here that said we was having an increase in taxes because of the yard waste program. That's not true. I would never do that, and I don't think anybody up here would admit that that was a true statement. But that councilman did increase the ad valorem tax that you get on your annual bill by 40% during his tenure, just for the record. County meeting. You done with the cell phone? County meeting.
What?
County meeting. I asked for two things. One, a 7-day advance agenda, but specific things so it didn't wander into just a, whatever is on my mind I'm going to talk about. And I don't, these are pretty general pretty general subjects that has no direction as to what we're going to talk about. And that's tomorrow. So I'd like to have some discussion here is what is it we would like, we've never had discussion on this, what is it we would like to discuss other than just anything joint? I'm not sure what I would have. Does anybody else have ideas, or you're going in there with, just talk about what's on your mind, or what?
Well, on the agenda is obviously code enforcement, or excuse me, not code enforcement, comp plan, which that's going to open up that part of it with the county and the city to see where we're at. And then
Our comp plan doesn't have anything to do with theirs.
no, but if you have discussion, we want to hear what they're doing, they want to hear what we're doing, so then we can then go a process next step. Not to say that we're going to do it. If they're redoing their comp plan and we're redoing ours, why don't we discuss it and see where we're at? And then also some of the others is, I know Mr. Roffett asked for traffic. That's kind of under some of our downtown part of it. Then that's why it didn't be a specific item. That's going to be discussed. And then also, this meeting, to me, the first meeting was about kind of put those two things out there, talk about some of it, and city-county properties that we want to get, they have properties in the city that we would hope that they would be willing to maybe help for development, do other things. So those are the options. And then the last part of the meeting will be future meeting and put some items out there that you want. Obviously, I would think that under our comp plan, some of the things would be the affordable housing issues as we go forward, because we can change some of those in the comp plans to give people incentives to do things. So all of that will play in, and, obviously, any council member or county commissioner at the end can bring up what they want and for future meetings. Because I don't think this is a one and done, and I don't know that we can have them every month, but maybe at the beginning we can have some more to get some ideas of where we both are. Because again, we can talk individually with them out there, but we can't talk with them as a group. So there's no ulterior motives here other than next steps.
And on that, I was surprised to see that we had a state rep going to come and give us an overview of what happened, because I think that any of us that read the paper, we already know about. I mean, we're probably the most informed about what the state. So can you please pass the message
It's
that
10 minutes or less.
Or less.
It's already
or
been
less,
saying.
Or less.
He was gonna come, he had his second grandbaby yesterday. He was gonna try to come here today originally into the county yesterday, but they wanted to be with the family. So at the last minute, he asked, could he come to this? And we thought, and my exact comments were 10 minutes or less, and I'm okay with it.
All right.
So that was definitely, because that's not what this meeting is ultimately, but it's basically getting both of us at the same time.
A comment to your comment is that we're gonna talk about comp plans for county and city. A comp plan encompasses everything from A to Z. You could be there a week if you wanted to talk about, so that means it's open to almost anything you want to bring up, and I have a problem with that.
No, it's not gonna be that in this conversation.
I'd like to have
It's-
specific items. As a matter of fact, I think we voted on this, if we need to bring that record for, I'd like to see a little more specificity to what we're speaking about, so we don't get off topic and start talking about anything that's in a comp plan, which
not
is
gonna-
everything. Well, that's
No,
what you,
it's just
that's what you
the-
said, and that's what my fear was, that
It's
it
not
would
gonna be.
become,
I
not
don't
gonna
know
be,
what you're
so-
afraid
it's
of.
not gonna happen.
I mean, what are you afraid of? I mean, it's just coordinating two governments trying to coordinate together when you're planning. That's the way I view this. I mean,
Well, we voted on it, so
No. All right.
that's what I voted on, so I'm not, so now we're going over there, we don't know what we're really gonna talk about, do we? Do you, Ms. Coker, I'd ask you, what do you think you were gonna talk about?
I think we're just going to talk about having a coordination between the county and the city.
What?
Transportation, anything, all of it. We all, just because the line is right here, I mean, it all gets affected. I mean, I don't know why, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm afraid of not having a coordination with the county.
There's opportunity later. If this meeting doesn't go like we want, we don't have another one. It's gonna be up to you. We gotta start somewhere. And it wasn't going down, to say, we're gonna talk about, everybody's gonna spend 3 hours on their comp plan and our comp plan. It's a matter of saying, okay, is there some ideas we can throw out there that, hey, you're doing your comp plan, they're doing their comp plan. Maybe we could do something with some staff to come up with some positive, I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas.
right.
And that's that. So, and then we'll see tomorrow. And if it doesn't work forward, then we don't do it again.
There's not anything that can be actually
No, we can't
done.
vote on anything.
Yeah, so I don't understand.
Well, there is some specific things, and I thought they would be on there. Like, one is converting the new jail to a housing for veterans. That would be one. Annexation, straightening up the lines. I would think that would be a great opportunity moment to talk about how we straighten out the zigzag lines so that police and fire and the public know if they're in the county or in the city, and sometimes don't, because it affects, accidents, fire, rescue, and so forth. Those are things that we could, and probably doesn't take any money, but it takes coordination. When you start talking about annexation, that's when the meeting would probably get contentious.
But it sounds like you can do that at the end.
Well,
You'll be able to-
yeah, the way it's designed, you can talk about anything, and that was what I was trying to avoid, to be directed with specific things, so that we didn't get off topic and start talking about anything. And when you say comprehensive plan, that just scared me, because that is everything. And so I did not vote for that, and that's part of the record, so, anyway, moving on. Last meeting, we approved a boat dock application in the area where we're putting a river walk, and just approved today $3 or $4 or $5 million to have a guardrail and make it look like it's a continuation of our existing river walk. Obviously, that's a good thing. So this boat dock, to me, interferes with it, but here's the problem. I was assuming that we already had a survey. So I was so upset, I went down there and thought, well, if they had a survey, it is what it is. I went down there and there was no survey markings on the wall, seawall. And that's required. As a matter of fact, if you bring it up in part of the application, it can be, and so I don't think we knew, we had all the facts. We did not have and our requirements are that we have a survey that is current, which means 3 years or less. There was no survey. There was probably a survey when they bought the home 17, 18 years ago. So I don't feel we got the proper information to make the decision, and we should, what do we do about it, rather than re-voting on it? I didn't have that information, and today I know a lot more than what I did that last meeting when or I'd even brought it up, hey, bring back the survey, because they could come back with a survey, and it might not be what we thought. So then what do? We just don't give the permit? Yeah, but we wasted a lot of time talking about that. We should have a process that says you get a survey first by a certified surveyor. Those cost a lot of money. I've had to do it. They're very expensive, and they're very time-consuming, especially in a market like we got today. We just didn't have that. So I met with Jim and our city surveyor down there, and that's how I found out there was no independent survey before our meeting. So I'm asking that we undo what we did because we didn't have proper information.
Mr. Rudisell, is there any way that can be done by a no vote? Is that something that?
Well, a council member who was on the prevailing side of that vote can make a motion for reconsideration.
True, but you don't have, that's a Robert's Rules of Order. But if you did not have full information to make the vote, then it becomes a kind of an administrative, you shouldn't have had a vote without that information, or at least that's my opinion, that you don't have to go by, that what you're saying is prevailing vote, that's Robert's Rules, which I agree with, Robert's Rules. But that is not mandatory, and you can do anything if you don't think you had the proper information. Because we had a boat dock in here not that many months ago that was wanting to go out 900 feet. And I don't know whose area that was, Miss Barnaby's or Miss Ward 2. And we were like, oh no. And so it went away. Well, here's why it went away. There's a lawsuit over it because the existing dock went out 500 some odd feet, but the dock builder got off. He actually got into the neighbors' riparian rights, because the riparian rights, or not riparian rights, this is a special use. There's no riparian rights here. I don't know if they have riparian rights, but when you mark it on the seawall, it goes straight across that waterway. That's what my understanding of it is. And so that dock builder told me we cannot build the dock because the first dock was built not within the bounds. And so there's a lawsuit, and we could get dragged into that because did we check? Probably not. Did we check to where it was built? Because you're supposed to have an inspection after you do the dock. So where does this dock end up at? Without a survey, I just don't think we should be entertaining that. And there's applications, I gave it to, it's on the application that you can be checked off. It wasn't checked off that there was a current survey within 3 years. And I don't understand why we have procedurally, and I talked to that dock builder, and he says, I have never been able to ever make a presentation for special use without a current survey. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to go back and dig out every record, but he builds hundreds of them. He says, I have never, ever done that. And it's always been requested. So why did we do that this time?
Ms. Singer, I mean, do you have any comments to this, if that's the facts?
And we had some conversation about it, and there isn't a code requirement for a survey, but he is correct that we do have on our application for special use permit. Generally speaking, that's a survey of the property itself. There was a snippet of a survey for the property itself, but it didn't cross the street. Now, I haven't been here long enough to see these docks that cross the street, whether we require them to survey the property across the street, but it's my understanding that we have not. So, that's my understanding from the way it.
But there was no current survey. That survey was in 2005.
Right, it is an older survey.
It was 17
that they
years old,
included.
and it only surveys the land.
Right.
Not any rights of, because you're crossing three public one Riverside, one was a name, I didn't realize it was named that, and then a green space. So, and it's clearly going to interrupt this project that we just approved. So I don't know how we
Well,
got here to begin
we
with, just
did-
based
we
on that
did
alone, but
include-
we didn't have a survey.
Yeah, we did include the snippet of the Kimley Horn drawings for that portion of the Riverwalk extension, and it does show that the sidewalk crosses the street right before this property.
We
So,
changed that.
so the property, we indicated the lines on there, but the drawing was from Kimley Horn, which was showing the Riverwalk bending, turning back into the neighboring property and connecting with the public sidewalk at that point. So the dock was beyond that because it's beyond the neighboring property. But in terms of a survey, I'm not familiar with the fact that if we've ever required an individual to survey public property in trying to get a dock. It's one thing to say that they have to have a survey up to the water line for their own property, or where they're required to prove riparian rights. We have another one where they are showing the right-of-way and the property across the street because it is part of their property. They are contending that they have riparian rights. So it's a little different. We actually put a greater burden, I think, in the code on people who have riparian rights to prove that than we do on other people, but both have to go through a special use permit. So it is unusual circumstances, I'll grant you that. I mean, and I don't know that we necessarily have a precedent for that, that we have consistently required when you cross the street and you are not claiming riparian rights that you have to survey their property.
You have to know by the surveyor, because he has a legal obligation to make sure he gets it right, because there's been a number of lawsuits about these types of things. And I just quoted you one that was presented to us, is now in the courtroom. And I don't think we need to put ourselves in that position without a proper survey that's marked on the seawall. Because once the surveyor marks the 2 marks on the seawall, that's where he says you can put that boat dock, you have to set back 10 feet on each side, according to the state of Florida, and they have to verify that. So you're not going to be able to get that verification without those markings or that survey. Why are we approving that before we get the survey?
Well,
It looks like we got the cart before the horse.
Yeah, before they can actually get the permit, they have to bring us the DEP approval.
Okay, so isn't that backwards of what we should be doing? Well, we shouldn't be meeting and debating this before, because the surveyor may say you can't do it. What if seriously you can't? Well, we just waste all of our council's time to approve it.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah, but
think
all
that's
of
the way
them-
we should be doing
Yeah,
it.
but all of them that we approve is them conditionally getting approval from DEP, and if they don't get that approval, then it's null and void.
Right.
But that's in almost every case I remember since I've been here, that's what's said.
And that is in the code.
That is in the code.
That's not how it's been done with others, according to my own personal experience and this dock builder that builds hundreds of them.
But
I mean, I do think
He's
it
the one who
warrants.
told me
it-
about the lawsuit and that we need to do, he didn't say anything, so don't go, I'm not naming his name.
Yeah, but you gotta, if you're bringing somebody up that's saying something for evidence, you gotta bring them in, or we've gotta talk
Evidence.
to them.
He doesn't have any evidence on this
He
case.
said that it has to be done this way.
But some have riparian rights and some don't, is what I'm gathering is the difference.
This doesn't have it.
No, this does not. And we made that statement very clear.
Yeah.
That, and if something changes, you have to tear it out at your expense. So.
That's true with any of them. That's just a given. That's
Not
true
with
with
the
any of
riparian
them.
right. If they have riparian.
I'm not so sure about that. That's a legal issue that we'd be here in the next 3 hours debating that, because riparian rights is hard to determine unless it's clearly on the deed back when you bought it. So we got one now in my area. Again, this is number 2 that I'm gonna be beating my chest about up here, and it's in the Riverwalk area. You know what? We can just eliminate it based on that we have a $7 million project that will interfere with. End of story. And I am not happy that we have done that, and we've got a couple more that need to be tore out because it's a public safety to kids. You shouldn't be able to, you have to put up a fence to go around a swimming pool in Bradenton or in the county. If I have to build a swimming pool, I have to put a fence up to keep children from getting out of it. How can we let people build a dock that they can just walk out there and drown? So public safety is surely a concern. And if we put a Riverwalk in there, then they can build steps over top of it. How ugly would that look? That's not something we should be entertaining.
Well, then, I would say that.
And they can
it's
get that
worth
through
a
Public
discussion.
Works without a permit. Is that true, Mr.? He can, it was mentioned, I played this tape numerous times last night, just to make sure that I had my facts right. And he says he wants to build steps over our railing, like you can picture the railing out here, and come back down to this dock. So he's gonna walk up, walk over, and he can get that permit through, there's no, well, you can get a permit, but there's no, through Public Works without having to go to anybody else. Just like that, just like the one we did over on Riverview for going under the road with bore drilling for water and power.
I'm unaware that we have a permitting process for people to build steps to access a dock.
That was
I've never
said in-
issued
that
one
was
in
said
my
in the
11
meeting.
years working with the city.
That was said in the meeting.
What meeting? Not by me.
Again, I play a tape, I have photographic memory, but it was said that he could go through Public Works to get those steps above, and so that would be going around planning. But that, you know what? This don't confuse this thing, or try to just spin it. We
I'm not
don't
trying to
have
spin
We
it.
don't have. I'm not saying you. I said do not have a survey.
Not arguing that point.
But it doesn't sound like with Mrs. Singer saying, though, that we have to have a survey for that part of it. But then DEP will approve it, and then if they approve it, then it goes to the next step, if that's what I'm
DEP will
understanding.
approve it, which you give them $100.
Yeah, there is not a code requirement for a survey. As you mentioned, we do have it on the application, but that implies a survey of the property itself, not necessarily, it's not specific to what's going on, and that's the application that applies to all special use permits, not just docks. I was gonna say that we have been discussing code changes in workshops with the Planning Commission, and one of the things that we've discussed somewhat in depth at this point is docks, and I think it's worth a discussion. I mean, I don't want to be in a position where I'm not bringing you the information you need to make a decision. I believe there was sufficient information for you to make the decision and how it dovetails with the Riverwalk when you did your deliberations, but that's up to you to decide whether or not you want to bring it back for reconsideration. But separate and apart from that, I welcome a discussion on docks and where we want to go with those, because the original draft that we had of the regulations was really going to substantially reduce some of the requirements, and I think after reviewing the 900-foot dock and a few others, I think we want to probably go in a different direction. So we'll bring that back for discussion purposes at a workshop in the near future to get that resolved, in terms of at least the application requirements, if nothing else, so.
Well, we need to know what we're voting on, and we didn't have all the information.
Well, this is his
Ms.
comments.
Coker?
Well, the only thing, I don't love the docks, without riparian rights. The problem is that they've been allowed for so long to just all of a sudden arbitrarily stop doing it. I think it's a great idea to address all the docks and put in some things, but to just all of a sudden say, okay, those other people have them, but now we can't let you, that's what I have a problem with.
With one exception, we've got a $7 to $8 million capital outlay with the cities that the taxpayers are paying for, and that we had no legal obligation to put any dock in, but we have now got a obligation to our citizens to spend that money wisely and make it public safe and not add more to it. Because when this conversation started before you were here 3 or 4 years ago, the existing docks did not have riparian rights because we had checked them, and they were going to be asked to pull them out. So there's 2 or 3 more down there. And so we all agreed that those 3 would come out. Now we've added a 4th one. So how do we add a 4th one and tell those people to bring them out when they're all falling apart?
Well, we're looking at the riparian rights originally because we actually had docks we were gonna build in the water. So we were checking all options. We decided not to spend the money because it was very expensive to put the boardwalks.
I know.
Which would have did it. So in reality, we're not gonna ask those 3 docks to come out right now anyway.
Well, yes, that's my understanding.
No, those docks, Mr. McCollum, those docks aren't gonna be asked with the current Riverwalk
Well, first
expansion.
of all, they're in code violation because you.
Well, that may be a different issue. Yeah, that's a different issue than us
But
with Riverwalk.
we never, we never had conversation with, that those docks would be coming out? It interferes with the Riverwalk and the viewing of that area that we don't have along the first phase.
I think the mayor correctly stated it in that it was originally part of the conversation when there was a concept that involved part of the construction being boardwalk being placed out into the river. That was removed from the design plans.
And so those docks wouldn't be touched unless they meet some code issues but if they get the code issues, they have the opportunity probably to fix them up if they want, so I mean, I think that's two different issues from those three to this new one being allowed, but again, the majority ruled, and that's what happens in a democracy.
All right. So you're not gonna reconsider it because you didn't have the facts?
That's
Just
opinion.
wanted it on record, so, okay. There's been a lot of talk in this chamber that about Bradenton housing. And I am a representative for the city to that, and I have no authority. So let me say that to begin with. But I do have the option to try to make things work for both sides or everybody. And Mr. Mitchell came in here 2 weeks ago and handed us a rebuttal or a response to some of the comments that were made. And he was expecting to get a letter, a phone call, or something back from individuals. I answered some of what I could, some of it I said I can't do it. I'm going to propose, he's here today unless he objects or the chief objects, that the chief and I and Mr. Mitchell get together to work this out. And either one of you can speak to this now as part of my time as a councilman. Would you both agree to it, or did you want to have time here?
What would the meeting be about?
Be about, well, it'd probably be a comprehensive plan. It'd be from A to Z of concerns of the Bradenton housing and what the police department is. So, I don't know what the topic's going to come up because you're going to have to ask those two parties. I know I've read all the minutes for 2 years over there, and I see a different view of it than others. And there's a board that actually makes those decisions, and they're concerned that the city is maybe, that they're not.
Their board is, or Mr. Mitchell is?
Their board.
Okay.
I've polled the board, and they're concerned that we're not rightfully, we're disparaging a executive that's running a housing organization that needs support, not public scrutiny.
All right, so I just would like to make a comment before they make that decision that obviously this has been going on for years on this board, as when I was a council person, now as mayor, of what the authority of this body has.
We don't have any authority.
We don't have any authority. We all agree on that. The only authority we have is to appoint the board member or remove a board member if there's a problem. Accusations are made at public comment that until there's some substantial evidence, we just can't do things willy-nilly. When Mr. Mitchell had some accusations made about him personally by one of the people coming up in public comment, then, he did bring in a letter to us. And there's some accusations now made that we have not responded. But I just want to read something in Mr. Mitchell's letter, because I did read it and understand it.
Did you respond?
Let me finish, Mr. Sanders. So he goes through and he answers her questions, which again, we have no evidence if those issues are raised or not, or are true or not. We have no, that's what she said in a public comment. Mr. Mitchell elegantly answered them. And then finally, in his last 2 paragraphs, he says, finally, all concerns or issues relating to me or the housing authority of the city of Bradenton may be presented during the public comment period of our board meetings. Our board meetings are the best setting to voice concerns, complaints, or issues regarding me or the operations of the housing authority of the city of Bradenton. Our board meeting schedule is posted to our website. He's got the website. should you have any concern or any questions regarding any issues relating to me or the Housing Authority of the City of Bradenton, I may be reached at, and he puts his information. Well, this to me was him answering the questions without any further evidence. I didn't see a need to respond to that because he says, should you have any questions regarding any issues? Right now, I don't have any. I went to the board meeting, as you were at the other day, and listened, and I thought the answers that came out of that meeting were well done. There's another issue come up with one of the board members, which I have referred that to our legal counsel that he's checking on. What is our process of removing somebody if the evidence is there? You know, in this country, it's innocent until proven guilty. So just because somebody said somebody did something, I didn't think Mr. Mitchell was guilty of that. He answered it. In the meeting the other night, they talked about, well, if there's an issue, produce evidence, and then it'll be taken care of. So, you know, I have no issues with the way things are done there. The issues are we get blamed for stuff we don't control. I believe in my term so far, as the people that we've appointed, you know, I brought up and they were appointed by this council, are doing a good job. You know, and one of the things is, I didn't call Mr. Mitchell and ask him if these were the people he wanted. They were appointed because, you know, Mr. Mitchell is a professional and wants to do the best he can, but listening to some of the regulations, and obviously I think some of the residents heard it last week, that you just don't get kicked out. You've got issues, and that was good to hear. So if I don't have any questions from him and I'm comfortable with what it is, there was no reason to respond because he didn't ask for that.
Well, his primary beef was that he was accused of having problems without the opportunity to address those or have a dialogue between the city and his organization so that the media doesn't pick up on this, because I've also talked to them and they seem to have only heard one side of the story, and how these people ended up at city council meeting, I don't know. Obviously somewhere along the line they thought that this was the authoritative body, and it's not. And I mentioned that you need to go to the meeting, but the tone and demeanor was completely opposite of what I witnessed in here when they were here. They were calling people pedophiles and different stuff like that, but come to find out that is not true. It was checked out by one of the board members and said they don't like us entertaining people that make false statements. It's defamatory. And that's where I'm at, and I think it should be done privately, but if not, both would have to agree, and that's where I'm at. I'm trying to mediate this.
All right, and one final comment that I'm just going to make, and then if the chief wants to address something, that's fine. You've been here, I was on the council with you at the time. We, and you even, if I remember correctly, said we asked Mr. Mitchell to come here numerous times, and he refused to come in the last, not recently, but before that, because we wanted him to come and talk about it with us. We tried to set up meetings, and at first, we didn't know why. So then it did escalate a little bit. But now I'm glad, and he said in his meeting the other day, that he's willing, or I guess you're gonna come at once a month, you know, just to, if there's any questions. But that has been all along, and when I sat in that chair over there where Miss Barnaby sits right now, we kept saying, Mr. Mitchell, come and talk to us. Educate us on the process.
Yeah, but Mayor, that was after a terrible article in the paper. And it's mostly related, if you go back and read the article, it was mostly related to the previous executive director and his theft. He went to prison for it. So that rolled off to this guy, which is not fair to him.
Right. Well, and I agree with you.
If he's a problem, we'll fix it. But to be disparaged and in a public setting at our council, I have a problem with that, and I don't like it. And so I'm not defending anybody. If you're wrong, you're wrong. But don't say you're wrong in a public meeting without a rebuttal from the person you're accusing of being wrong. And I think most of the time you can work those things out.
And he was given opportunity last year to come to meetings and for whatever reason didn't. And that was, you know, there was times when he was asked to come.
I'm not defending either one. They both can speak. If you want to, you know, solve it, I believe that, you know, you compromise, not turn it into a boxing match. So.
Chief. And we also, another thing though, we don't write the articles. You know, that's the Bradenton Herald does, or whatever paper it was.
I didn't say
Chief.
that, I know that.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm never denied a meeting with anybody upon request. I'm very open and transparent, and either myself or staff consistently meets with people every day, all week. I was provided a letter via Mr. Sanders 2 weeks ago that had an enumerated list of issues that was authored apparently by Mr. Ellis. After review of this list of issues, one of them looked worthy of a further glimpse because it hinted at discourtesy by one of my officers. Over the last 2 weeks, I have looked into that. It has been documented as an inquiry, even though you, Mr. Sanders, kept insisting that your review of it didn't warrant as much. I made it clear to you that you don't make that decision when it comes to allegations of discourtesy, that I take them orally, written, or in person. And once I'm made aware, I have an obligation to look into it. We completed that investigation yesterday. As you're aware, you've repeatedly asked me each and every day for the results, and so I shared the results of that with you prior to sharing it with Mr. Ellis, although that was a little atypical because I typically like to share it with the person making the complaint first, but I thought that that would suffice. As you know, you asked for your ability to send that directly to him, and I cautioned you that that would set a bad precedence. Those types of inquiries should come from me. It should come through a proper channel of asking for a public record, or we share that. The other situation surrounded an eviction process. You've continued to insist that the officers may have acted inappropriately, but you do not have all the facts on that. I have body camera. I know what happened, and I insisted to you that there was no misconduct for me to look into. I'm more than happy to discuss this with Mr. Ellis. He's never requested a sit down with me. The only person who I've heard from each and every day on this issue has been you, and we have been communicating regularly on this issue. I believe this morning, because I signed off on it yesterday, dated yesterday, I instructed my staff to do as they normally do. Please get with Mr. Ellis and let him know the results of this inquiry. Beyond that, Mr. Ellis, if you would like to sit down and we can discuss things, but remember, the police department is responsive in many regards to issues at the Bradenton Housing Authority. We're not managing, we're not doing anything. We get called, we come. People complain, we try to assist. People have problems, we do what we can to mediate those problems. That's our job, that's what we do. We're thrust into the middle of this. You ask a question, hey, have you had any problems there? Yeah, we've had problems there. That's an area where we're having some problems. We're getting calls and concerns. I'm not going to stand away from that comment. So that's all I can say.
All right. And I know also at that meeting the other night, Mr. Sanders, I couldn't get there for citizen comment, but one of the individuals that had sent a lot, and our code enforcement had been there, some of the different issues that came up, she didn't even bring that up in that meeting, but she brought it up in this meeting. So it's like they've got to get the true body that can solve something if there is an issue is that board. And I think Mr. Mitchell acknowledged that the other day and was saying that. So, you know, again, a lot of the information that was in his letter, what was accused of, is actually now been, I don't want to say resolved, but at least they say, hey, you're not just walking in one day and looking through a window and kicking somebody out. You have a process, the court system and all that. So that's good to hear and understand it more now. And that's why I think a year ago, a year and a half ago, whenever it was, would have been nice to have him come. So you're welcome here anytime. And at the beginning of the meeting, we have presentations. If you want to give us a presentation, and again, we want positive. I think there's a lot of positive what I heard out of that board about, you know, and I think in your letter you even said it, that the facility was built in 1961 and 1976. Things have changed. So if there's ways to do what some of the things for the neighborhood that can be fixed up and be more modernized, and even, I mean, there's even, I heard something out there that there's even ways now sometimes home ownership comes into some of that through the Will Smith Foundation and different things that they build it and then they give opportunity. You know, maybe that would put you out of business, but I think you're a man that said if we're getting home ownership and helping people, you'd be willing to do it in a way to make it better for the community. So there's never been anything that we're saying, Mr. Mitchell is this. Other people said it, you answered it, lack of evidence. It is what it is, so. But thank you, Mr. Sanders. Anything else?
Mr. Mitchell, do you wish to address any of that, or could you approach the podium, please?
Okay. The same day that I emailed the mayor's secretary and Bill Saunders, I called Chief Bevan's office and asked for a meeting, so that's absolutely not true. I also, in my response to the board, Mayor Brown, you said that you guys had invited me. I made it clear to the board, I've never gotten an invitation to come to the meeting. Had I gotten one, I would have come. It was only after all of this stuff with Ms. Griffin came up that I started coming to the meetings because my board asked me to. We're right now operating at 40% staffing, which means, and I told Councilman Sanders this morning, my time is tight. And I'm not trying to avoid anything, but I have a business to run, and I'm trying to run it with like 4 employees. So it hurts me that people are making these allegations about me. It hurts my family. I have a son, this teenager, who's always on social media. And the thing I said is, there were some comments made at the February 9th meeting before the facts came out. And I don't want to call any names, but there's certain people who got up here from the city side who attested to what was being said. And I'm like, well, how can you attest to that? And then you're saying that there's a problem with the facility. No one's contacted me and said that there's a problem. Those are the issues I have, because this is a public forum. This is on social media. And as I said before, when I leave here, I cannot get a job. My name is negative. I cannot get a job, because in this industry, they go to social media. So I will have to leave here and go do my own business, and I'm okay with that. I just don't like people coming saying slanderous things about me, my board, or my agency. Come to us. Anyone who knows me can tell you I got documentation for anything you're saying. Like Ms. Thompson came here last week, the last board meeting you guys had, and made some allegations. We went to her unit this morning to try to address them, and she cussed us out and let us in. Those are the type of things that we deal with. Okay, and again, if you want to know anything about the agency, just invite me. I promise you I will come. I will give you facts. I will give you documentation. I'm not big on words, but I guarantee you I'll have my documentation.
And this was before I became mayor. In my
Yes.
time, Mr. Sanders was on there, and the invitation kept going out from the previous mayor, and Mr. Sanders.
It did, I don't know.
And I met
we even
with
asked-
Mayor Poston
Right.
personally.
Right,
So
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I
anything
was
about that.
the ward representative when you first started.
You were.
Yep,
I
and
remember
we
that.
got
You
in
were
there
for Byrd.
and started, and then I felt it more responsible that Mr. Byrd be the representative since it was his ward. You know, so that was my opinion, you know, because again, I came in at the last year with, or when everything was going on previously, and then I thought meeting with you originally and that, and it was great. You know, I mean, it was, but you're gonna get it, but that was, again, the invitation had been given out, and it was talked about in open forum here, that, well, we've asked him, and even, if I'm correct, Mr. Sanders even said at times, you know, I don't know why he won't come, so, but,
So
yeah.
I have had 2 program reviews by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. I've had a HUD OIG investigation. All this is based on what people are saying. And I'm still here, so that should tell you something. If HUD has said, we've looked into things and we don't see anything, there's nothing going on at the Bradenton House Authority. We are a property manager, just like any other landlord. We have a lease. They have to abide by the lease, and when they don't, we enforce the lease. Now, there's a handful of people who they don't like that process, and those are the ones who come to city council and make a fuss.
And have you ever heard me comment up here to those
No,
people?
sir.
So, I mean, and I don't think anybody up
I agree with Councilman Son. I just like to clear the air.
And that's
If
what we
there's
want
any
to.
issues, I like to meet and talk about
If
it.
you're getting it, we're getting it too, so.
That's
we
right,
gotta
and I
sit
know
here
that.
take it.
And I warned the Bradenton Police 2 years ago about taking these calls from the families, and I told them, you're creating a headache for yourself. Because one of the sergeants, I said, we get people who call the city council, who call the mayor, the police, because they say we won't get them records out of their files, or they got a parking violation. That has nothing to do with law enforcement. You know, we have a lease. So again, I'll be more than willing to meet with Chief Bevins. I think my biggest concern is with the police. I've never had a problem since I've been here with the police individually, but in my role as executive director, yeah, they treat me very disrespectful.
Well, I think individual council people get the questions too, and sometimes that sparks the police involvement or the mayor's office. And again, some of it we don't know. We're saying, well, if this is being said, how do you investigate it? There's only one way.
Right.
Call the police, but it can't be a working relationship. Well, the police only do what Mr. Mitchell says, or the police only do what the resident says. It's the evidence. And we know in today's society, every single person in that room the other night had a cell phone, an iPhone, that if Mr. Mitchell was looking in the window,
Absolutely.
there would have been a snapshot picture of it. If other people were doing stuff, board members were doing stuff, there'd be a picture of it. So, so we feel you from that standpoint because we get the same thing up here.
I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
All right.
Appreciate it. All right, Mr. Sanders, anything else?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Mrs. Coachman? All right. The only other thing that I have really is, yesterday we got an email from Mr. McCollum, and I think it shows the severity of situations, especially with our, trash collection and driving those trucks and that, and, there was an accident, I believe it was yesterday. It was an accident out at the dump area not with our people, but with Waste Pro, I believe, or one of the companies, that there was an accident and a person lost their life, another person was severely injured. So, we think about that, and we hope and pray for those two gentlemen's family that God's be with them. So, I think that's all I have. Anything else for the good? I see Reverend Golden, Chairman Golden, in the audience. Did you have something school board related you wanted to say to us before we close?
I didn't come to say something to school board.
Okay.
I'm now that Councilman Roth.
Right, that's what I thought. So, yeah.
Yeah.
There's another issue that I wanted to address, if I might be permitted.
Yes, sir.
In Ms. Coachman's ward.
Okay.
Mr. Roth, if you know of a school.
Please state your name and.
Reverend James T. Golden, Reverend James Theopolis Golden, the chair of the Manatee County School Board.
Okay.
All right. If you know of a school that does not have a fence around it, please let us know so that we can go put a fence around it. That's a matter of security and safety for the children at the school. The problem that you cite, availability or access to the parks after school hours, is something that I would be more than happy to work with you about and work with the board to try to develop security after hours, which is a funding problem. So we can, especially we could do that in the city of Bradenton.
Great, thank you.
I did want to share with the board a copy of correspondence that I received yesterday afternoon at about 1-something in the afternoon, and I had thought that I would have an opportunity to address it earlier, but I'm also the chair of the board of the Centerstone Mental Health, Behavioral Health Facility, and we had a board meeting this morning at 8 o'clock, so I couldn't be here doing the normal public content. This was addressed to me and to Sister Golden. Sorry for the delay in response. We were still in the thick of the selection process, so I couldn't really give you much of an answer that was worth much. That being said, in having multiple and continued discussions with the city clerk, he was able to finish the last of the selection process for all of the applicants. It was not an easy decision process, I assure you. 5 spaces and probably a dozen applicants that were all good. Regardless, I am pleased to inform you that the Goldens, that the city has chosen Miller's Sweets and Treats to be one of the 5 final selections to lease in the garage space. Next up will be the process of drafting and executing the lease agreement. I'm sure that you can imagine that everyone wanted the corner space, so that had to be taken into very serious consideration. And in the end, they have decided to have a different user occupy that space. The smaller space is also selected for a different user, though that will be of little concern to the Goldens, as they did not have any interest in that space. What remains are 3 suites, almost identical in size and layout, and then they give the addresses of the suites. So I would like to extend the Goldens their choice of which space they'd like to occupy of those three. If it helps, I have included a floor plan to see the layout as well. I look forward to hearing back from you both. Please respond by email so we can clearly track the communication going forward. The last time I was here before you on a personal matter, the decision I had been told was going to be made by this city council as to what was going to happen to the 5 retail spaces that you all have down the street here. So I guess I'll start by saying thank you for considering what we had asked you to consider, we being me and my wife. But I certainly would have thought that it would have been better if I had been informed that what we had asked was not going to take place before reading it and being told that you all had already decided that you would change. Now, don't shake your head. No, I'm reading what has been written.
Mr.
Now, if
Golden.
that's not true.
Mr. Golden, we were never going to be the decide. We had a veto. We chose the right to veto someone if the real estate people that we hired chose someone that we didn't like. We only had veto. We only retained veto power. It had nothing to do with the choosing. Nothing to do with the choosing.
Well, I understood that Mr. Perry and the contractor was to vet this and bring it back to council, so I'm not aware of any of the.
No, we were never going to be.
Never going to do that?
We were never going to be involved in the choice project. We were only going to have veto power.
And we were
Well, but we still don't know. This is the first I've heard of this.
I didn't know we even.
I didn't even know we had, shouldn't we be told?
Right.
Really?
And
He's up here telling me something I don't know?
Sounds like you all need to have some more discussion.
Sounds like we need a little communication there.
Maybe
don't
if
we?
I could opine on this. As council remembers, this was brought to council, and ultimately the selection is made by the administration. There was policy reasons for that, and I'm somewhat unsure about what Reverend Golden's grievance is, if he's disgruntled that because he was selected for a space. Right. And I just don't know if it's not the space he wants, because there was a larger space of the 5. We received, I think, 25+ applications. Mr. Barker and I went through them very carefully. We tried to have a portfolio of businesses that met what I thought the council wanted, which was some retail space as well as some light food and beverage. Miller's Ice Cream was selected as a sweet shop ice cream vendor. There was also a coffee vendor that was discussed as a very good occupant of that place. And then there's 3 retail establishments. They were very well qualified, each and every one of them. And I could probably make an argument to put one food retailer over the other or one retailer over the other, but I had to make difficult decisions. I was glad that Miller's Coffee was selected so that Reverend Golden, Chairman Golden, and Mrs. Golden have the opportunity to participate down there and the like. But I'm not sure I understand what the grievance is, because this is the first I heard about it. And I think it has to do with the size. I think he wants the premier space.
When you finish, I'll tell you what my grievance is.
I am.
Because
Yes,
I
sir.
don't want you putting words in my mouth.
Of course. And I apologize.
That's quite all right. I do understand. I really do. What I'm concerned with is that the space that we asked about and the space that we inquired about until this moment, we never knew that we were not being considered for the space. And you don't know who the other people are yet that are being considered for that space. Now,
That was how we decided it.
well, even if you have veto authority, as you say that's what you all determine, you don't even know whether you want to veto it. And if I were not here today, you would not know whether or not I was vetoed from the space that I asked. All you will know is what is presented to you as a space that, quote, I'm going to be allowed to have. And that's just not transparent, nor is that fair, because we were the first people to apply for that larger space. Now, having said all of that, because none of this is my problem. I don't have a grievance with you. You're the council. I used to sit on this council. And if this is the way you decided that you want business to be done, that's fine. And we are happy to be a part of the uplifting of downtown. Whether we get it at the way that we know that we have done from our business plan without knowing who the other people are, which you still don't know and I still don't know either. But the city manager knows. And if that's the way it's to be, that's fine. So I will tell you what I would like for you to consider, that if we are going to be allowed to only choose from 3 of the 5 spaces, we are asking that the space that we allowed, or that we are allowed to have, will give us use of the sidewalk in front of our space. One of the reasons we wanted the larger space was because we don't just want to serve ice cream. What we would like to do is to provide a venue for musicians to come, to play, saxophonists, violinists, for people to come and read poetry and to do things to make the downtown ambience a little bit better. But we won't have a chance to do that on that corner space now, because your city manager has decided that there's something better that will go there. So I'm not gonna argue about that. But I do think, because I know what transparency is, and I know what it's like to be cut out unfairly, simply because someone else has decided they know better about what ought to happen. So I was born at night. It just wasn't last night. And so what I'd like to leave with is the idea that, yes, we are happy to have any space that we are allowed to have. We just hope that whatever space we are allowed to have, we will be able to have access to the curb in front of the space that we're renting, and that we don't have to pay for that, or that there is another condition for that, because these are the kinds of ideas.
That's why there's garage doors and stuff in those buildings, so you could be on the sidewalk. That was always part of the process that we were here with. And
I just walked down there and I saw it. I knew that there was a garage door in the space that we had inquired about.
But they're in all of them. That was purposely done that way to have sidewalk shows and all that. And I think the reason that this council ended up voting for the way Mr. Rolfe said with the veto power, because it took the political part of it out of it. And let the business part of it say, okay, what are the 5 best options and what meets those options to make it better? And again, there was no political vote of it. It was more of a business plan, and it wasn't that whoever got first would get the one they picked. It was going to be always that it was this way. And again, it's not one way or the other about anybody. It was about having the best business that meets the needs of that timing. And that's why, to me, the administrator was the best way to do it.
Well, and the whole idea was supposed to go to the realtor. The whole idea was supposed to be that there couldn't be political we couldn't be accused of political favoritism. That's why we took ourselves out, so that we couldn't be accused of that.
You know, I appreciate all of this insight.
Ms. Coachman wants to say something.
I want to just say this too. I hope it was remembered that I had said, I understand they're going to bring us their suggestions or what they think is best, but we would also get a chance to look at the ones that didn't make it.
Absolutely. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
was trying
want
to get
the authority to pick up the phone and says, my guy's over there, application, put him on the top. That we took the political stuff out of it. But once it was decided by the city administrator and the contractor, I understood, and I'm asking Ms. Milton to go back and get some records if everybody disagrees with me, that I was supposed to know as a councilman who was going there and who was not, so that I could prevent anything like what you're just explaining to me now in front of the audience, which is embarrassing to me that I don't know. I hear a lot of stuff, Mr. Golden, like that out there, and I've complained that we don't communicate well here, because I don't know what the reason is, but it needs to be addressed in this city. And I have got to know before the public knows what the city's going on, or I look foolish. And this is happening not just in this case, other cases.
Well, like I said, I no longer sit on this board, so I'm not going to be trying to tell anybody how to do their job. But I wouldn't be a good husband or a man if I didn't come here and tell you what has happened to my wife. Now, what
Got
you do?
selected.
Yeah, right. No,
She got selected, so that's a good thing.
No, the owner of Millie Sweets and Treats got selected. My wife did not get what she asked for, and she does not know why. But I'm gonna go tell her now.
25 people plus didn't get what they asked for.
How do you know that, Mayor? Because what I'm
Trust
saying.
our administrator, yeah.
Oh, you trust your administrator?
Trust our administrator, and I trust our realtor that we hired.
Mayor, thank you for that support. I'd imagine as the chair of the school board, you have to trust administrators too, and I won't go any further than that. I received that information, and those selections were made probably about 2 to 3 days ago. I didn't know which people were going to finalize, and maybe they'd get scratched off the list and the like. And so it's fairly new information. I think that email you referred to went out fairly recently. And if I could just finish, and the outside space, I told Mr. Barker to make it available to each and every tenant because there are roll-up doors. And I think it's a great idea of what you were suggesting as far as some programming outside and space for Millie's as well. But I am a little bit taken aback about that there's some sort of untoward motivation or improperness. And I can assure you, I try to make a business decision. And the question is, how do you know? I have the records. I can take you upstairs right now. I can show you the 25 people, the 20 people that weren't selected. Millie's was, and the whole host of things. I can do that. There's no problem. And the like. And
I don't need that, Mr. Perry.
Okay, yes,
but
sir.
Your board.
I need.
Sure. And I will do that.
But one of the things that could have
Maybe you
happened
already
is,
have it.
no, I don't have anything. So,
okay.
so maybe one of the things, though, that what you're saying right now, if one of the 5 selected backed out, would that be embarrassing to them? So, I think the process is working the way I anticipated it, where you pick it, if the top 5, if 3 of them backed out, you don't want to have their names out publicly yet to say, why did you back out? So you can spin it a lot of ways, and the whole purpose, in my opinion, was to take the political part of it out of it and let the business decision be made, and
I
I
don't
think
think
that
anybody's
was.
spinning it, and I appreciate Mr. Golden, you coming to us, because you know what? I wouldn't have known this. It's just like pictures tell stories. People take pictures, and people get away with stuff if there
You
wasn't.
would have
a
known
pic-
it when the contracts were done.
Why do you
As
interrupt
Mr.
me?
Perry,
I'm saying what Mr.
as
Perry
Mr.
said.
Perry has
Well,
pointed
I'm
out,
speaking to the gentleman
Yes.
here.
as Mr. Perry has pointed out, I am the chair of a school board, and in answer to that question, I make sure before we go anywhere with any decision that we are informed, each and every board member. That's what the Sunshine Law is
Mr.
designed
Golden,
to do.
your administrator was just reprimanded for something that we all read in the paper, which is neither here nor there. So there always is a trust factor with whoever your employee is sometimes.
I think it was Ronald Reagan who said, trust,
And then
but
verify. Verify, absolutely.
And all I'm trying to do here is to verify. I don't cast aspersions on people. You all know me. I'm
Could I
pretty
change the
direct.
subject? Did you guys approve the affordable housing waiver of impact fees for affordable housing projects? Has that come up yet? I was at your meeting a month, 2 months.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not
Oh, okay, is it
You all
on,
know I
is it
don't,
coming up?
You know, I don't, and I'm not going to give you an indication. of-
Oh, come on. I want some
Thank you
inside
very much.
information.
And we will work on that.
Yep, all right, thank you.
Okay,
All right.
yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, any further department head information? Mr. McCollum, all right.
Please note.
Just want to make you all aware, as part of Mr. Perry's discussion this morning about the ARPA funds, and one of the things that we talked about was smoke testing. Lo and behold, we'll be doing smoke testing on Monday at various locations throughout the city. There'll be door hangers put on the people whose areas are going to be impacted. But should you get any calls, we are doing smoke testing.
You'll let us know what areas ahead of time. So.
Yeah, the information has been provided to Jeannie, so hopefully we'll have everything up on the
People
website
call
as
us
well.
and tell us their gutters are on fire.
The other thing that can tend to happen, and I've seen this, is when you do a smoke test and somebody has a floor drain tied into it, it will fill the house. And it's a surprise for people.
Well, if the floor drain is properly working, it shouldn't I mean, it should
If
happen.
there's water in the trap,
Right, yeah.
but usually the trap dries out. So,
Oh, a floor drain, yeah, floor drain.
so anyways, that will be happening starting Monday, as part of the response to the waterkeeper's lawsuit as well. So
Is
just wanted
there
to.
any,
Fire's gonna get most of the calls.
Yeah.
is there any, you know, some connections aren't supposed to be made that aren't in the code. Is there any, you're not gonna knock on somebody's door and say it's whatever's hooked to the public sewer.
If we find a house that's like, for instance, if we find that somebody's roof drains are tied in, oh yeah, they'll be getting a knock on the door saying that's illegal and you need to fix it.
Okay, that's what I wanted, that's what I wanna know as a councilman, because there'll probably be some of those calls, because in some communities, if you get caught doing that, maybe it's a slap on the hand, I don't know, but you're not supposed to drain everything into our sewers.
Well, I can only tell you that given the ramifications of the lawsuit, we don't have the luxury to be able to just slap somebody's hand. It will have to be fixed.
What would be the penalty if I was a homeowner and I was caught doing that example?
Penalty?
Or what, I don't know, what's the repercussions?
The repercussion would be that you would be required to redirect your roof drains away from the sewer system and take it away, not connected to your sewer level.
And have 30 days?
It'd be a building safety violation,
Yeah.
Mayor, Counselor, that Pat Wenzel would probably have to enforce.
Correct.
So you could have a lot of these.
I mean, I have no idea how many I'm gonna find.
Well, thank you for being, you know, transparent and telling me, because the phone will ring off the hook if some of that's going on.
Oh, absolutely. No. And that's why I wanted to make you aware, because this is the first step in the process, so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Call fire department.
Anything else? Department heads? Thank you very much. We'll be adjourned.
Next meeting, 35 minutes.